everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Bento, and today I'm going to be giving you my updated 2026 Survivor Perk tier list. For anybody who's been in my community for a while, I did my first official Survivor Perk tier list right about a year ago between the Springtrap chapter and the Walking Dead chapter. So basically this will encompass everything everything that was in the last video as well, updated because, you know, some perks have gotten changes since then, as well as all of the new Survivor perks from The Walking Dead onward. So yeah, we're going to be covering, I think it's like over 200 perks in this tier list. So before I get into covering each perk here, I want to first clearly define what makes each tier what it is. Because I know like a lot of people will probably have questions about that. So first and foremost, as is true with all of my killer and survivor perk tier lists, perks are judged alone by their strength as a single standalone perk. I will cover certain really strong combos and, you know, point out like, oh, these perks are a lot higher when combined together, stuff like that, or these are a lot lower in certain combinations. But for the most part, actually entirely, each perk is judged on its strength alone. I believe a good perk doesn't need to rely on other perks to be good, and so that is a very important part of this tier list. But, okay, so I will just define each tier for you first. So first we have the S tier. These are the best perks in the game, and they are perks with effects that so strong that alone they can change the outcome of the game. The effect itself can change the outcome of the game. Not a niche situation, not, you know, anything like that, that using this perk as intended, what it's supposed to do, it will change the outcome of the game. That's going to be your S tier perks. A tier perks are really good, really strong, but not game-changing in nature. You'll see quite a few exhaustion perks in this tier, other strong perks that, again, effects are good or strong, but not game-changing. Then we have the B tier. These perks are not good, they're not bad. A lot of the time they're just outclassed by an A or an S tier perk that has a similar effect, or they're outclassed by something else. Like they're not impactful in a good or bad way. They're not like really noticeable, I guess, especially not for the other side. The other thing about B tier perks, in my opinion, is that if the game were balanced, as in if the game were not 10% killer-sided or balanced as such, these perks would not need any changes. These perks would be perfectly balanced. The A and S tiers would probably need nerfs. The C and D tiers would need buffs, but these perks are fine as is. The C tier perks are just niche or bad effects. They're not worth using. They're not like an active detriment for you to have, but they're still not good. They're bad enough to the point where it's like, okay, you're probably better off using almost anything else except for the D tier perks. And the D tier perks are genuinely so bad that you'd be better off running nothing at all. It seems harsh, but it's true. All of the D tier perks have one thing in common, and that is that the time investment to activate the perk cannot be earned back through the use of the perk alone. So that is what makes those perks bad. A lot of them, again, in combinations with certain other perks or what have you, can be maybe like C tier, but alone these perks cannot return your time investment, and therefore you're throwing the game by using them. So yeah, all right, well, that is the definition for each of the tiers, and let's get into it. I'm going to start in the S tier, go down to the D tier. Oh, one other thing, as is true with all previous tier lists as well, for both killer and survivor perks, the tiers are not in order. So just to start off, like I'm not saying adrenaline is better than shoulder the burden or adrenaline is better than DS. All of the S tier perks are better than all of the A tier perks, but the tiers themselves are not in order. So don't take it to heart, I guess. Okay. So first up we have adrenaline. Adrenaline is an endgame perk for survivors that basically makes it so that whenever the last gen pops, if you are injured, you will become instantly healthy, and you will get a 3-second 50% haste speed boost, much like a sprint burst or live. However, it also ignores exhaustion. So if you are exhausted from something like sprint burst or live, adrenaline will ignore that and get a speed boost. So yeah, really solid perk. Game changing in nature. You know, if you're chasing somebody who has adrenaline, that can absolutely change the outcome of your game. It is a little bit less good than it used to be because it used to activate off the hook, but that's a whole other thing. As it stands now, I would say definitely still an S tier perk. Game changing in nature, great perk. Next, we have Decisive Strike, also known as Will to Live. If you did not get a chance to buy the Halloween chapter before that went away, this is a perk. It's a general perk now, or from Laurie Strode if you have her. And this is an anti-tunnel perk. It activates for 60 seconds after you get unhooked. And when you get unhooked for those 60 seconds, if the killer picks you up, you will get a itty-bitty skill check. And if you hit that, you get out of their grasp for free. It is probably the strongest self anti-tunnel perk in the game. We're going to cover another perk in the S tier that's probably stronger than DS for anti-tunnel purposes, but it is a team anti-tunnel perk. DS makes the killer either have to do one of two things. They either have to slug you to avoid it, which, you know, obviously opens up the possibility for a teammate to come and pick you up, or if you have like Unbreakable or Conviction or something like that. But it buys you a second life, essentially. You get to have another chase and buy your team more time to do gens, which is really what needs to be done if somebody's being tunneled out. Everybody needs to just sit on gens, and DS gives you the chance to waste more of the killer's time so that everybody else can do gens. So really solid perk. Next we have Unbreakable. This is an anti-slug perk from Bill Overbeck. And once per trial, if you recover to the 95% mark, you can pick yourself up. And you also recover, I think it's 25% or maybe 50% faster. That effect persists. The recovery speed increase persists even after you've used this perk, but the self pickup can only be used once. Can definitely change the outcome of the game if a killer is hard slugging or not hard slugging. Just leaving somebody on the ground for, 16, 17 seconds and allow them to pick themselves up. If you die in a pallet with teammates around, you can force the killer into a lose-lose situation there. It's just very, very strong. The amount of times I've had Unbreakable either save my life or save the game is just insane. It's a very, very strong perk. Next, we have Dead Hard, which is an exhaustion perk, but also kind of an anti-tunnel perk. It's weird like that. Dead Hard essentially makes it so that twice per trial, at once after each unhook, you can, while injured and running, press a button, and you get like a little 0.5 second window of endurance. So you do have to time it pretty well. But in that 0.5 seconds of endurance, if the killer hits you, you will get deep wounded instead of going down, and you can continue your chase. And this is why Dead Hard is so game-changing. I don't like the design of Dead Hard. Even as a Dead Hard user myself, I don't like the design of it. I think having a perk that has both anti-tunnel and exhaustion-based effects is unhealthy design. But with that said, it's still game-changing. I mean, by definition, having that extra hit can be the reason you make it to a gate, or it can be the reason that you don't get tunneled out early, and it can absolutely change the outcome of the game directly. Next, we have We're Gonna Live Forever. You will often hear this referred to as Wiggleth, and that is what I will refer to it as from now on. This is a perk from David King. Also, Dead Hard is too. They're both perks from David King. And Wiggleth increases your heal speed of downed survivors by 100%. And for 10 seconds after you pick them up, they have endurance. So this is a really good team anti-slug perk. The endurance effect goes on a 30-second cooldown after you use it, but even the heal speed increase is really, really good. I kind of struggled with this. I was like, endurance has a 30-second cooldown. Is it really S tier because of that? And the more I thought about it, I was like, yes, it is. Because just that one chance, that one time of picking somebody up where they get 10 seconds of endurance, if a killer's slugging, like hard slugging or not, can absolutely change the outcome of the game. So even with that 30-second cooldown on the endurance, I would say that it's an S tier perk. Next, we have Deliverance, which is a perk from Adam Francis. This perk activates after you have safely unhooked a teammate. A safe unhook is when you unhook somebody and they don't go down within 12 seconds of being unhooked. So it's pretty easy to get. But once you've safely unhooked somebody, you can unhook yourself with 100% certainty on your first hook, and you get broken for 60 seconds after. This, for the longest time, I would say was probably the best survivor perk in the game. I would say it's outclassed now by one other perk probably, but this is great for killers who are camping, for killers who are not camping. Basically, the reason Deliverance is so good is because it removes all of the pressure that a killer has from getting a hook. When a killer gets a hook, it's not just about progressing that survivor towards death. It's about the fact that now they can go start a new chase, and instead of 2 people being able to work on gens, now only 1 person can work on a gen because somebody besides the person who's in chase has to come off of their generator to go and get the save on the hooked survivor. Deliverance removes this necessity. Deliverance makes it so that person can now unhook themselves, allowing 2 people to stay on generators and progress while 1 other person's in chase, and the killer loses all of their pressure from that. It is 100% game-changing in nature because of that. Really good perk. Really, really strong perk. The only downside to this perk is the fact that, I mean, it's not so much downside anymore now that survivors can see each other's perks, but a lot of solo queue survivors don't use that feature. So the only downside is that it is completely useless if you're the first one hooked. It's completely useless if nobody else lets you get an unhook to activate the perk. But still, insanely good perk. All right. Next, we have Boon Exponential, and this will probably be one of the hottest takes on this tier list, but every single time I have made a survivor perk tier list, official or unofficial, this perk has been in the S tier, and it's because, like, even though it is pretty situational, because you have to be within the radius of the boon, and you have to make sure the boon is set up in the right spot and all that stuff like that, if the killer is choosing to slug or hard slug or just slug for a little bit of pressure, recovery speed on this is so fast, 16 seconds, and it's infinite, game-changing in nature. It is, you know what I mean? Slugging is one of the strongest things a killer can do, whether it be for pressure or because they have to. And this completely negates that. It's an insanely good perk that, yes, it does require a little bit of setup, but in the right situations, which at high levels of play is pretty often, it can change the outcome of the game. Absolutely. Next, we have Reassurance. This is a perk from Rebecca Chambers. And what this does is if you get close enough to a teammate who's on the hook, you can press, I believe it's, I don't know what the button is on keyboard and mouse. I think it's square for me, maybe. You press a button and it gives them 30 extra seconds of hook time. Just 30 extra seconds. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, you can use this once per hook state per survivor. So if you can do it for a person's first hook state and their second. So you can give them a total of 60 extra seconds on the hook. This is insane, okay? Survivor hook states right now, each individual one, first and second, are 70 seconds each. 70 seconds each. You give them 60 extra seconds on the hook, that is basically a whole third hook state that the killer just has to sit through, okay? This is really good for endgame situations, buying more time to get a save. It's really good in the game if the killer is choosing to camp. It's really good in the game if you just want to get a little bit of extra gen progress while somebody sits on the hook without having to go for a save. This perk is so insane in a world where survivors have 70-second hook stages. Now, of course, in a lot of your solo queue games, survivors want to take advantage of the fact that there are 70-second hook stages, let alone have Reassurance to make that 100 seconds. But when used correctly, this perk is 100% game-changing, 100%. And now we have what is probably the best perk in the game. Like I said, tiers are not in order, so pay no mind to the fact that it's at the lowest spot in S tier. But we have Shoulder the Burden from Tori Kane. What this perk does is it allows you, if you have less than 2 hook states, you can't be on death hook when you use this, but you can either be on first hook or no hooks. You walk up to a survivor who has any number of hook states and is on the hook, And instead of pressing your unhook button, you'll have a specific prompt for shoulder the burden. And when you take them off the hook, their hook state, one of them, will transfer onto you. You will scream and become exposed for 40 seconds. I mean, I hate that I have to explain why this is a good perk. I mean, a lot of people don't really get it, I guess, especially like lower level players. But this is a team anti-tunnel perk, and I have never once played a game where I or one of my friends was using this perk in a Swift, or even in like duo or trio, and it not change the outcome of the game. Because that's exactly what it does. That's what it's designed to do, right? Even if the killer is not tunneling, it's especially useful if the killer is tunneling, but even if they're not, right? If I have 0 hooks and one of my teammates has 2, and everybody else also has 0, so the killer only has 2 hooks and they're both on one of my teammates, and I shoulder the burden, I am now making it so that they no longer have somebody 10 seconds away from death. You know what I mean? It keeps somebody in the game longer, which can, if the gens get done, contribute to more people escaping. So that is the entire point of the perk, is to change the outcome of the game. It is an absolutely insane game-changing perk. This perk is so busted that if the game was balanced, like, you would see me rioting and picketing the streets for it to be gutted and nerfed into the ground. The only reason this perk, the only reason any of the S and A tier perks aren't necessarily deserving of nerfs yet, in my opinion, is because the game is killer-sided. If the game was not killer-sided, again, I'd be picketing in the streets for this to be nerfed. This perk is absolutely insane. Of course, you know, the force slowdown blight hard tunneling at 5 gens is also busted and insane. So it's like, you know, the perk is a necessary evil. Unfortunately, you will not see this perk a whole lot in solo queue because of the 40-second expose that it gives after you unhook or after you shoulder the burden for the teammate. A lot of people cannot, I don't want to say can't be bothered, aren't good enough to outlast that 40 seconds and make the perk actually worth it. But yeah, this perk is absolutely crazy. All right, so now we are moving on to the A tier. And just as a reminder, A tier perks are really good, really strong, much like the S tier perks, but they're not quite good enough to be game-changing. Again, still good, very, very good, but the effect alone is not game-changing in nature. So first we have Deja Vu, and this perk makes it so that you can see the 3 closest generators to each other at all times, and you get a 6% repair speed boost on those gens. Now the 6% is negligible at best. I think it's like 5 seconds that you save on the gen with Deja Vu. It's like not even worth it for the speed boost. Never, ever, ever run Deja Vu for the speed boost. If you know gen spawns and you know where 3 gens are going to spawn and stuff like that, you don't need this perk because, again, the repair speed boost isn't worth it. But this perk is especially good for preventing 3 gens, and it's therefore really, really good in solo queue. Of course, when we, judge these perks, we have to judge them by the average or typical game of Dead by Daylight, and average and typical games of Dead by Daylight are solo queue. So Deja Vu is a really good perk for preventing those 3 gens because you don't have that level of communication with your teammates. Like, hey, don't do that gen over there, you're going to 3 gen us. Instead, you can just work on the 3 gen and hopefully prevent it from happening in the first place. There are more 3 gen protections in place now, the gen kick limit and stuff like that, but it's still a really good perk nonetheless. Next we have Kindred. This is another solo queue best friend kind of perk. What this does is it makes it so that if the killer is within 16 meters of a survivor's hook, the Kindred user's hook, then everybody else can see the killer. And they can all see each other. So you can see who's going for the hook, you can see if the killer is going to be nearby, all that stuff. It's just a really good, solid solo queue information kind of perk. Another bonus to this perk is the fact that if you can see the killer's aura within the range of the hook, that means that the person's anti-camp is going up. Even though we do have an anti-camp bar on the HUD now, the anti-camp range starts at 16 meters. So if a killer is proxy camping or face camping a hook, you'll know just because of the effect of this perk. So just really good, solid information. Next, we have No One Left Behind, and this is an endgame perk. And what this does is it makes it so that you unhook and heal 100% faster once the exit gates are powered. On top of this, you also see the auras of all your teammates. So this is really good for endgame saves. If you pair this with Flow State, which we'll cover a little bit later, it's even stronger. I still wouldn't say quite. I mean, it might honestly be S tier. I haven't tested them out together, but alone, definitely like a good solid A tier perk. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about it. It makes it so that you can't quite avoid the 1-for-1 situation, like with a killer, forcing you to trade in the end game. But if you have somebody else go in and take a hit, and then you come in for the save, you can pull them before the killers pull down. So it's good for well coordinated saves. It's good in solo queue too, though. Good solid perk all around. Next, we have Resilience. This is one of my favorite perks. And what this does, it's a utility perk. It just makes it so that essentially all of your actions are 9% faster when you're injured. Gens, heals, unhooks, cleansing totems, opening chests, opening exit gates, vaulting, everything basically is 9% faster while you're injured. There are 2 killers minimum. Well, 1 killer that absolutely forces you to stay injured. And that is the Plague. And 1 killer who you really should be staying injured against for the majority of the game, which is the Legion. So, I mean, this is, and even then, even if you're not going against a Plague or a Legion, you should be spending the majority of your game injured. Healing in most situations is a waste of time, barring a few exceptions. And I mean, Resilience is a good, solid utility perk that rewards you for being good enough at the game to play injured for a good chunk of it. Next, we have Bond, and Bond is I don't want to say like a solo queue must, but it is very, very, very helpful for solo queue players. All it does is it reveals the auras of your teammates that are in 32 meters of you. That's it. It removes the need for having to search far and wide for somebody to heal you. It removes the need of searching far and wide for somebody to work on a gen with, if you are looking for somebody to work on a gen with. It is just really solid, consistent information. And solo queue needs that more than anybody. Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of perk that you'll never see in Swifts, because with a Swift, it's as simple as, oh, I'm at Shack, I'm at main, I'm behind the main building, come heal me. Like, you don't need this perk in Swifts. If you ever see this perk in the endgame screen, no, you didn't go against a Swift. But it's like a solo queue player's best friend. I would recommend this perk as a staple of any solo queue build, if you have the build freedom to do so. Next, we have Prove Thyself, which, like Bond, is also from Dwight Fairfield. And this was a hard perk for me to place because I was like, okay, well, maybe it belongs in B tier because it doesn't negate the slowdown from repairing with somebody else, but it does decrease it. And I just really thought about it, and I was like, okay, to me, this perk is an A tier perk because it doesn't really have a downside of any kind. There's no, all it does is increase your repair speed. Like that, there's no downside or activation requirement like a lot of other repair speed perks. And I feel like for that reason, it kind of has to be an A tier. Of course, if the tiers were in order, you would probably see this at the bottom of A tier. But I feel like a perk that increases survivors' repair speed, even though they are repairing together and being a little less efficient because of that, with no downside or activation requirement, just has to be A tier. Again, especially when we get into a lot of other repair speed perks that have all of these requirements and rules and regulations and downsides to them, and Prove Thyself doesn't. So I feel like Prove Thyself on its own, solid A tier perk. Next, we have Sprint Burst from Meg Thomas. Now, before I even get into what this perk does or why it's an A tier perk, first and foremost, if you pair this perk with Vigil, it is instantly S tier. The Sprint Burst Vigil combo is definitely S tier. Sprint Burst on its own, however, not game-changing in nature, therefore an A tier perk. With that said, Sprint Burst, what it does is when you start running, you get 50% haste for 3 seconds. It's that simple. That is all it does. And then it goes on an exhaustion cooldown for 40 seconds. It helps you be a little bit more safe if you have to repair a gen that's in a dead zone. It can make sure you get to a tile before the killer gets a free hit on you. It can make stealth killers a little bit less viable because if you spot them in the distance before, or if you spot them last second even, the Sprint Burst will help you get away before they can hit you. Great, good, solid perk. No notes. It's a very good perk. Next we have Iron Will, and this one was also a hard one for me to place because, as many of you guys already know, I am hard of hearing, and Iron Will's like a waste of perk slot against me. I can't hear your grunts of pain anyway. So I just tried to be, I guess, a little bit objective about it and tried to look at it from the point of view of somebody who can hear, suddenly not being able to track a survivor with their ears. I assume it's gonna be tough. What this does is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It just makes the survivor have no grunts of pain as long as they are not exhausted. Yeah, it again, hard for me to say anything about that because I can't hear survivors anyway, but I imagine it fits among the other A tier perks. Next we have Lithe from Feng Min. This is my personal favorite exhaustion perk that I no longer have the build freedom to run. What this does is when you vault a window, you get 50% haste for 3 seconds. It's literally just Sprint Burst, but instead of when you start running, it is when you fast vault a window. Yeah, I mean, it is slightly more map dependent than something like Sprint Burst. You will always get to use Sprint Burst, you know, unless the killer has like anti-exhaustion. But Lithe, you do have to fast vault a window or pallet, and so it is a little teeny bit more map dependent. It doesn't have the dead zone benefits that Sprint Burst does. You kind of have to already be in chase to use this, which is fine. It's not like it's, you know, a bad perk because of that. It's just a little more dependent. Still a really good perk, especially when used correctly, but it is a bit of a, there's a term in the DVD community for anyone who doesn't know called lithe brain that I use, that a lot of other people use, other killer mains use to describe survivors who just willy-nilly vault windows for their life. You'll see it. If you play any killer, you'll know it when you see it. Like a survivor makes a mistake in chase, but gets out of jail free because of their life, you'll see it a lot. Yeah, I mean, it's a good perk, not game-changing, but still very strong. Next we have Babysitter, and I believe in my last killer tier list, this was in the S tier, because at the time, I think Babysitter, either the haste was higher or it lasted longer. I think the haste was higher. I think it was like a 20% haste. Now it's 15, which is still good, don't get me wrong, but 20% haste is not, 15% haste is not game-changing in nature. The whole reason 20% haste is because that makes you faster than any killer in Dead by Daylight, you know, at walking speed. Except for now, I guess, Kursu's head form. But everybody else, you know, that makes you faster than every single killer in Dead by Daylight in their standard walking form. Of course, like I said, now it makes you, at best, the same speed as the killer, which, again, is still good, still very strong, but not quite game-changing in nature. It also removes your grunts of pain and pools of, not grunts of pain, scratch marks and pools of blood, I believe. And then the user, the person who has Babysitter, gets to see the killer's aura after they unhook you. That's the other thing about this perk, is it is team anti-tunnel. So you are, like, when you equip this perk, the only value you're going to get out of it is the aura read. You're really bringing it for your teammates, which, again, still not a bad thing. It's still a great perk. Next we have Off the Record, and this one is also like a, you know, oh, how the mighty have fallen situation. This one was also S tier in the last tier list I did. But in, was it November? It was either the September or November patch that this perk received a pretty sizable nerf. Instead of 80 seconds of endurance off the hook now, that has been halved to 40 seconds. So the reason this is no longer game changing is because good players do not benefit from it. At the time, 80 seconds was, really solid, even for good players who can last a long time in chase. Because 80 seconds is sort of teetering the border on like how long even some of the best survivor players can last in chase if they're being tunneled. There were times even I outran my 80 seconds of off the record. But that was very rare. More often than not, I would find myself getting hit in the last 10 to 15 seconds of the endurance. Now with 40 seconds, that's less than DS. You know what I mean? Like that is less time than decisive strike lasts. And as a lot of you know, you probably end up forcing your DS more often than not. If you're a good player, and you run decisive strike, you'll find yourself having to jump into a locker to make sure you get value out of it, because if you didn't, you would stay alive a lot longer than that 60 seconds. And obviously, if you're lasting longer than 60 seconds, you're lasting a lot longer than 40 seconds without being hit. So that's kind of the problem with off the record now. It's still not a bad perk. It is still by no means a bad perk. It's still very strong, but 40 seconds of endurance is less impactful than 80 was, because 40 seconds is really only benefiting lower level players. And that's okay. They're the ones who need it, right? They're the ones who need it more than really good survivors. So again, still a really great perk, not game-changing in nature. And now we have our first, well, actually, no, not first. Well, yeah, first, I believe. It's the first new addition to the A and S tier that we've covered here. Yeah, I'm almost positive it's the first one up here that, I'm not sure actually, but yeah. So this is Self-Preservation from Yunjin, and I believe if you go back and look at my Survivor perk tier list from last year, this was in the D tier, I think. I remember putting this in the D tier and saying, yeah, no, this perk, it's one of the only ones down here that's not like an active detriment technically, but it does reward you for playing badly. And that's kind of still true, but not so much. So what Self-Preservation does now is when somebody else gets hooked, you gain elusive for either 20 seconds or 30 seconds. It's a long time. And elusive is not necessarily a new status effect. It is technically a new status effect, but all it does is combine a lot of existing effects that survivors had. So what elusive does is it hides your aura, hides your scratch marks, pools of blood, and grunts of pain. All things that have already existed within DVD, but they combined it to make the elusive status effect. They did this years and years ago with Undetectable too. So it's nothing new necessarily. It's just a combination of all those effects. But yeah, so Self-Preservation does that now. And that alone is good for helping you live longer. But the downside of this perk and why it's not S tier is because it inherently encourages the killer to tunnel your teammates out. If the killer cannot find you because you're elusive and you're hiding from their barbecue or their friends till the end or something like that, why wouldn't they tunnel out your teammates? You know what I mean? Like, they can't find you. So how are they supposed to come after you and spread their hooks evenly? So I feel like this perk, because of that, kind of incentivizes killers to tunnel. And obviously, if your teammates are getting tunneled out, you're not winning your games, right? Like, if you are escaping every single one of your games through the hatch because of your self-preservation, but all your teammates are dying every game, you're losing every game you play. And Survivor is a team role, you can only win as a team. So I feel like that's what's keeping it from being S tier, is the fact that even though the effect itself is good, it does have a negative impact on your team a little bit, assuming you're unwilling to take chase or sort of engage with the killer when your teammates really need you to. But still, like I said, strong, good perk. Just it has to be used by the right kind of player. Next, we have Resurgence. This is a perk from Jill Valentine. And what this does is it makes it so that off of the hook, you have 70% healing progress immediately. This is a really solid effect. Really good anti-tunnel perk. The only reason this is not an S tier is because it is hard countered by hemorrhage and mangled. Two very common status effects that you will see from killers. Sloppy Butcher has the hemorrhage and mangled status effects. Gift of Pain, which is probably the biggest, most obvious counter to this perk. Which is also, what is Gift of Pain called? It's Weeping Wounds, I believe, for those of you who didn't have Pinhead before he went away. So that is probably the biggest counter to Resurgence. But killers also have lots of add-ons that give hemorrhage and mangled too that hard counter Resurgence. So again, it's a good perk, but because it has like an obvious hard counter in the form of a free available to all perk, as well as add-ons that are built into killers kits, I can't quite put it in S tier. Next we have Made for This, which I believe I did not put in A tier last time. I think it was lower than that. But this one was also kind of hard for me to rank. What this does is it makes it so that if you are injured and you heal a teammate, you get endurance for 10 seconds. And if you are deep wounded, you have 3% haste constantly. Now, that is not the reason you should be running Made for This. If you are running Made for This for the haste, even if you're bringing it with Dead Hard or Off the Record or something else that can deep wound you, it is not worth it. You should not be bringing this for the haste. It's a nice effect, but due to diminishing returns, it can't be stacked as well, and it's just, it's a negligible amount of haste that requires a pretty niche situation to get. However, where this perk really shines is in anti-slugging. It doesn't seem like it, but allow me to explain. You will most often see this perk paired with We're Gonna Live Forever, Wigglelift, as we discussed earlier in the S tier here. And when you combine these two perks, remember, Wigglelift gives you, or gives your teammate endurance when you heal them from the dying state, and Made for This gives you endurance when you heal a survivor while you're injured. If you combine Wigglelift and Made for This, and you are healing a slugged survivor, both of you will have endurance when they get picked up. This is a very, 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 very strong effect to help with anti-slugging. Even then, Made for This still good on its own though, because again, you still get endurance when you heal teammates, and that actually doesn't have a cooldown. Wigglelift has the 30-second cooldown for your teammates getting endurance, but Made for This does not have a cooldown. So if a killer is slugging and all you have is Made for This, you can take the hit for your teammate as soon as they get up, and you both get away. Not quite game-changing, because again, it's very simple. The way to avoid it as the killer is to just hit the person that gets picked up, you know, and doesn't have endurance, because Made for This only gives you endurance. But again, when combined with Wigglelift, Made for This is S tier. On its own, A tier. Very good perk. Next, we have 5 Moves Ahead. This is also a new addition. This is a perk from Quante Young, and it is basically windows of opportunity with added benefits. So what this does is when you are in the killer's terror radius or a chase begins, you see the auras of 5 windows and pallets with like the closest 5 windows and pallets to you. On top of that, you also start moving 50% sooner after dropping a pallet. That goes on cooldown for, I believe, 30 seconds? I think it's 30 seconds. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah. So the seeing the windows and pallets part is obviously slightly worse than Windows of Opportunity, because Windows of Opportunity shows you all the pallets and windows within like 32 meters all the time. But 5 Moves Ahead shows you the 5 closest ones, so probably all you're going to need when it's needed, you know, when you're in the terror radius or a chase is beginning. That's really when you need that information, not all the time. And it has the added bonus of you, let me explain this in a way, if you're newer, that might make sense to you. It makes it so that you start moving 50% earlier after you drop the pallet, which doesn't mean you drop the pallet faster, but basically it means that when you drop the pallet, you let go of it and can start running faster. You know what I mean? Like you can start running sooner after dropping the pallet. which is especially useful against killers that have like attacks that are especially good when you're locked in an animation. Think like a Huntress Hatchet or a Pyramid Head, Punishment of the Damned. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like those powers are especially strong when a survivor is locked in an animation and can't get away. You know what I mean? Like they can't, because they're again locked in the animation of throwing the pallet. So it's a lot easier to hit them in those situations. But if you start moving 50% sooner, they're going to have to adjust to that. Even though that effect does have a pretty sizable cooldown, it is still a really good perk. Really, really good perk. And definitely outclasses Windows of Opportunity. All right. Getting into the B tier. So this is just a reminder here, the B tier is perks that aren't necessarily good or bad. They're just, a lot of the time, outclassed by an A or S tier perk that does what they do but better. Or they're just simply not impactful. Not in a good way, not in a bad way, just that the killer won't notice it, or, you know, it's not going to impact your game. You know what I mean? It's a nice addition, but not impactful, you know? Okay, so first and foremost is Hope. This perk is also kind of another, oh, how the mighty have fallen situation. I believe this was an A tier in my last tier list, I think. I'm almost positive it was an A tier. But Hope was nerfed, and now all it does is it gives, excuse me, a constant 5% haste while after all the generators have been powered. So after all the gens are done and the exit gates are powered, until you escape the trial, you will have 5% haste. Don't get me wrong. I mean, 5% haste is nice, but that means that, you know, all killers are faster than you. It's a little harder to catch you, sure, but all killers except Nurse are faster than you. So it's not really a good effect. It's not a bad effect. It's just kind of there. It also obviously is an endgame perk, so if you don't make it to the endgame, this perk sees no value. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I was hoping that this perk would get rebuffed to 7% after diminishing returns was introduced, but it hasn't yet, so we'll see. Next we have This Is Not Happening, and I feel like this perk is kind of overlooked a lot of the time. What this does is it makes the range of a great skill check bigger when you are injured. So this is obviously best paired with something like Resilience or Hyper Focus or something like that. But it is kind of niche. And I mean, it's not really niche, it's just overlooked, I feel like I said. This is really solid for making sure you hit more great skill checks, because every time you hit a great skill check, it's an extra 1% that you get on the gen. Like, that's not unnoticeable, you know what I mean? Especially in certain perk combos, you can guarantee, perk and item combos, you can guarantee more great skill or more skill check opportunities. So it's kind of one of those perks that I feel like a lot of people ignore, but I mean, it's not really good, it's not really bad, it's just kind of there. On its own, definitely not impactful in any way, good or bad, and that's why I think it kind of fits the definition of B tier. Next we have We'll Make It, and I did drop this down, I think. I think this was an A tier, and now it's in B, and here's why. I looked back on me putting in A tier last year kind of sourly, I guess, in the sense that it has the same problem that all healing perks do, all altruistic healing perks. And that is that it is hard countered by the existence of one killer. Just one. Obviously, Legion kind of counts too if you're playing correctly, but directly, just one. Like, just the existence of that one killer, the Plague, makes this perk completely and utterly unusable. And for me, that alone is enough of a reason for this to not be an A tier. It's not a bad perk. It's not a good perk because of that. It has just that elephant in the room that hard counters it, and for that reason, I just can't put it anywhere above B tier. And you will see that that becomes kind of a pattern with a lot of altruistic healing perks that we're going to cover in this tier list. Again, not a bad perk, but also not good for that reason. Next, we have Leader, and this perk makes it so that you do things a little bit faster when you're near a certain teammate. The person who has Leader, the user, does not get anything out of this perk. It is a team utility perk. It increases pretty much all of your teammates' actions when they are near you, except for gen repairs. If this perk increased gen repair speed, it would be an A tier perk for sure. Maybe, depending on the number, maybe even S tier. But because it does not affect gen repair speeds and it only affects heals and unhooks and gate opening and stuff like that, it's basically resilience for your teammates without the repair speed bonus. So again, not good, not bad, just not really impactful or noticeable. Next, we have Quick and Quiet, and it is rare that you will ever see Quick and Quiet on its own. I see Quick and Quiet in two types of builds. I see it with Head On and, like, you know, Flashbang and like funny Stun the Killer builds. And I see it with Live plus Dance with Me. That is the only time I ever see Quick and Quiet. But of course, I am judging the perk on its own. And for that reason, I have to say that it's not really good or bad. All it does is it silences your fast actions, fast vault, fast entering of a locker, stuff like that. And then goes on a like 20-second cooldown. I mean, it's not, again, just not impactful. That's the thing with this perk. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just not impactful. You know, how is you having a silent vault going to change the outcome of the game, or even have a small negative or positive impact on the outcome of the game? It just doesn't. You know what I mean? It's a fine perk. It's just not impactful. Next, we have Bonnie Knowledge. I know this will probably upset some people because Bonnie Knowledge received a pretty sizable buff since my last tier list. It doesn't have the self-heal efficiency hit anymore, so it's just 50% increase to heal speeds of all kinds. Self-heals, altruistic heals, all kinds of heals, except for, you know, non-healing actions. Like, this won't apply to Inner Strength because Inner Strength doesn't count as like a heal action. Or like Plot Twist, it won't apply to that because that doesn't count as a heal action, it counts as a recovery action. But still, I mean, you know, if you're self-healing with Self-Care or Strength in Shadows or a Medkit, it applies to all of that now. But like I said, it suffers from the same problem that Will Make It does, and that is that it is simply hard countered by the existence of Plague. If you are up against a Plague, or if you're playing correctly against a Legion, you will never ever see value out of this perk. It's just, it is too affected by the elephant in the room, just like Will Make It. Again, not a bad perk, definitely not bad. And the buff was very sizable to the point that I think it, you know, is definitely somewhat worth using now if you're willing to take that risk of it being useless, but it's not good or bad in an impactful way. Next, we have Empathy, and this reveals the auras of your injured teammates basically across the entire map. Good information. Very, very solid information. But like I said, one of the other standards of what makes a perk B tier for this list is it being outclassed by an A or S tier perk that does something similar or the same, and Empathy is just outclassed by Bond. Yes, Empathy is map wide, but it has the requirement of your teammates being injured, and especially in solo queue, you will find that a lot of your teammates are too afraid to stay injured. They would rather self-heal with Self-Care in the corner for 45 seconds than be injured ever. So you will not be seeing a lot of value out of this perk that Bond could not bring you. Bond doesn't have the health state requirement. It just always is active, you know, assuming there's teammates within 32 meters of you. And I mean, you don't really need to know if there's a teammate, you know, 48, 96, 120 meters away from you. Like, you don't need to see your teammates map wide. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but you don't need to. Bond is definitely showing you what you need to see. And yeah, it's just outclassed by Bond. Next, we have Saboteur, and this one was pretty hard for me to place because Saboteur is one of those perks that we'll cover on this list that you will just never, ever see on its own. You will never see Saboteur run on its own. 1 second. you will almost always see Saboteur run with background player, breakout, breakdown, Sabo toolboxes. It is just so rare that you will see Saboteur run on its own. With that said, judging it on its own, I would still say it is B tier, because it's outclassed by something, and that is Sabo toolboxes. If you are trying to just bring one thing to sabotage hooks, and your options are a Sabo toolbox, like an Alex's toolbox, or Saboteur, an Alex's toolbox with the hacksaw and I don't know what they're called, but the pliers, I think is, I don't know what the add-on is called, but the pliers, you're going to be sabotaging hooks a lot faster than Saboteur would offer you. And Saboteur has a 60-second cooldown. Yes, it does have the added benefit of showing you the hooks, and what I see a lot of people do is bring Saboteur to see the hooks, and then they bring an Alex's toolbox to actually sabotage with. That's probably the best use of the perk, is in a full Sabo build with an Alex's toolbox for the actual sabotage, Saboteur for the information, and like background player, breakdown, breakout, all that stuff. But again, it's a gimmick. On its own, it's, you know, just really not that impactful. Again, you're sabotaging one hook every 60 seconds and it's super slow. So if the killer hits you, you can't do it in the time that they're swinging. Like, it's just not impactful. I don't think you will ever see very much value out of this perk if you just consistently run it on its own. Next, we have Balanced Landing, which is the first exhaustion perk here in the B tier. And I believe I put Balanced Landing in A tier last year. I might have, I'm not sure. But since my last tier list, there have been 2 maps added to Dead by Daylight. And both of those maps have not a single place to use Balanced Landing outside of the drop down into the basement. It is, I cannot in good faith put this perk anywhere above B tier, knowing that there are two maps in the game now, and possibly even more coming in the future, where you straight up cannot use this perk at all. Like, how could I in good faith put this in A tier, knowing that happens? Fallen Refuge and Trickster's Delusion, by the way, are the 2 maps where this is the case for Balanced Landing. It's just outclassed like that. Like, that's the problem with it. It is just outclassed by Sprint Burst and Lithe. They are far less map dependent than Balanced Landing and give the exact same speed boost. I cannot in good faith put this anywhere above B tier. Next, we have Borrowed Time. And Borrowed Time is a perk that I guess it is kind of a, oh, how the mighty have fallen situation too, but it's not the same. Like, it's been not lower tier, more mid tier for a while now. Borrowed Time is a team anti-tunnel perk that gives your teammates longer endurance and haste off the hook by 10 seconds. So instead of their 15 seconds of endurance and haste off the hook, it is now 25, which is good. You know, it's you know, it's fine, I guess. It's not really good or bad. It's not game-changing. It's, you know, 25 seconds is, again, fine, but most good players, survivors, are outrunning or outliving that 25 seconds of endurance. It's the same problem with Off the Record, you know, but even more so. And of course, it is outclassed. Like I said, this is what makes it B tier, is it's outclassed by Babysitter, by Off the Record. Yeah, it's not really a bad perk, or a good perk. It's just kind of beaten out by those 2, you know, and that's what makes it not A or S tier. Gotta crack open a DC here. Try to feel it every time I record these videos. You can feel my throat starting to get scratchy like halfway through. All right. Next we have Alert. This is a perk from Fangman that shows you the auras, or excuse me, shows you the aura of the killer every time they kick a gen or break a pallet. Solid, you know, it's not good or bad. It's just not impactful. Like, how is that going to change the outcome of your game or have an impact on the outcome? It's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a bad perk. It's just kind of there. It's great utility though. You know, it can really help you with knowing how to path to get to the next chase, or excuse me, the next pallet, especially if you're actively in chase when it's being used. It is, however, hard countered by killers with undetectable. Pig, Wraith, Ghostface, any killer like that who's undetectable and chase with you is not going to be affected by this perk. So it does have that obvious counter, but still a fine perk. Next we have Wake Up. This is a perk from Quentin that increases the opening speed of the gate by 12.5%, I believe, for each living survivor. I mean, so that if everybody is alive, that's 50% faster opening speed. I mean, that's solid. That's very solid. Of course, it is an endgame perk, and it is an endgame perk focused on the opening speed of the gate. So it's really only useful. It won't see any value if you don't get to the endgame, and it definitely won't see very much value if you're the only one alive in the endgame trying to go for the gate. You know what I mean? If you're looking for a perk that helps you get the gate open when you're the last survivor alive, Wake Up is not for you. You're better off using Soul Survivor. But Wake Up is good for the endgame situations when everybody is alive, So yeah, I mean, slightly kind of niche, I guess, but not bad, not good, just kind of there. Next we have Detective's Hunch, and this perk shows the auras of totems, chests, and generators for a little while after a gen is popped. So even if you're not the one who finishes the generator, if a generator is finished, you will see the auras of all totems, chests, and generators for a little while. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just there. It won't impact your games in any positive or negative way. It is solid information. No notes, just a solid perk, I guess. Stakeout. Now, okay, since we're on Stakeout, I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to Hyperfocus. Stakeout on its own is a very, very average perk. It is one of those perks that I feel like is actually pretty well designed because it punishes the killers that need to be punished. Allow me to explain. So Stakeout gives you tokens for each, I want to say 20 seconds or 15 maybe, correct me if I'm wrong on that you spend in the killer's terror radius. And when you hit a good skill check, you'll spend a token and it'll be turned into a great skill check. Now, obviously, this does not punish any stealth killers or killers with low terror radii because they have lower terror radii and you have to be within the killer's terror radius to get tokens. So, and a lot of the time, stealth killers or killers with lower terror radii are the weaker killers. So they're not being hurt by this perk as much. The killers that are being hurt by this perk more are the killers with 40-meter terror radii, which are Light, Ghoul, Wesker, strong killers, So I feel like the terror radius part of this perk is very well designed because, again, it punishes the killers that need to be punished. With that said, when you combine this perk with Hyperfocus, which we'll cover later, that combo is instantly S tier. It takes, because of Stakeout's effect of turning good skill checks into great skill checks, it removes all of the skill expression from a perk like Hyperfocus. Kind of like This Is Not Happening, which we talked about before, but to a much greater degree. And something needs to be done about that combo. Something definitely needs to be done about the combo. But it's hard, you know what I mean? Because as you're looking at my tier list here, Stakeout on its own is just simply not impactful. It's just not. Same with Hyperfocus, because again, the skill input required to get full value out of Hyperfocus is in a really good spot, I feel like. Stakeout just removes all of that. So in my opinion, we have to find a way to make these perks work alone and not work together. Because right now, they're both really well-balanced perks, in my opinion. If the game were balanced, they'd be well-balanced at least. They're not impactful on their own, but together they're just so devastating. Especially if there's multiple of them in a lobby, multiple of those combos. So yeah, Stakeout on its own is just not very impactful, at least not against killers that, can't afford the impact. but we'll talk a little bit more about its synergy with hyperfocus when we get there. So next we have Dance With Me. We talked about this a little bit when I talked about Quick and Quiet, and what this does is after you cast vault a window or a pallet, for like 3 seconds afterwards, you have no scratch marks. And this goes on a cooldown for like 20 seconds, maybe. Yeah, it's fine, I guess. It's simply just fine. It's not good, it's not bad. I can't think of a single situation in which you having 3 seconds of no scratch marks will impact your game positively or negatively, or let alone have an impact on the outcome. So next we have Windows of Opportunity. And man, oh man, this is another one that has fallen. I believe in my last tier list, this was in the A tier. And it's, again, this perk hasn't gotten any changes since my last tier list, since in the last year. But this, 5 moves ahead, is the reason Windows of Opportunity is in B tier now. Because like I said, B tier is also reserved for perks that are simply outclassed by something in A or S tier. And Windows of Opportunity is outclassed by 5 moves ahead. It just is, you know what I mean? Yes, it shows you more windows and pallets. It's a larger range, and it is all the time. But like I said, when we talked about 5 moves ahead, you don't really need it all the time. You don't need to know where the pallets and windows are all the time. You need to know where they are when you're in chase, and that's really what matters. And of course, 5 moves ahead, like we said earlier, has the additional bonus of the letting go of the pallet sooner. So yeah, I mean, it's not a bad perk, Windows of Opportunity. It's just outclassed by 5 moves ahead. Is what it is. Next, we have Autodidact, and this perk is it's interesting. There's nothing else really like it in the game. So what it does is whenever you hit a skill check, when you're healing somebody without a med kit, you lose 15% of heal progress on the spot, but you get a token. And then each time you get a token, you get a little bit of that back, 15% back. So you lose 15% on the first one, but on your second skill check, you gain 50% back. So you get 0% progress on the skill check. And then you get 15% progress on the skill check. And then you get 30% progress on the skill check. And then you get 45% progress on the skill check if you get to 5 tokens, which is the max. I'm going to be honest, I feel like when most people use this, they don't actually get to that 5 token max very often, if ever. With that said, if you do get to the 5 tokens, it's pretty solid. So I mean, it's not really good, it's not really bad. It is, however, a healing perk, so hard countered by Plague once again. I think it's like a really just like definition of like a B tier perk. You know what I mean? It kind of checks all the boxes. All right. Next we have Aftercare. And this is another one that's just straight up outclassed by Bond, and this is why it's B tier. What this does is anytime you are unhooked or healed, or you unhook or heal somebody, your auras are revealed to each other until you get hit again. It's a nice little effect, I guess, but again, has too many requirements, too many downsides to compete with something like Bond, or even Empathy. Empathy is just a better version of Aftercare too, so yeah, I mean, they're both just outclassed by Bond. Next, we have Breakdown. And what this does is after you are unhooked from a hook, the hook then breaks, like gets sabotaged for 3 minutes. It's a while. It's a while. And then it, goes back to the way it was. This you will almost never see on its own too. You will almost always see this run by Sabo squads to create hook dead zones, so the killer has to slug. And it makes their job of sabotaging the hooks a lot easier. But once again, we're judging the perks based on their strength alone, and on its own, Breakdown just doesn't do a whole lot. I have come across it a few times as killer, where survivors are just running Breakdown and not like the other Sabo stuff, and it just, okay, yeah, I have to walk 10 meters further to another hook. Okay, BFD. Like you will not notice it. Next, we have Distortion, and this is another one that I think it had already gotten nerfed by the time of my last tier list video. I'm almost positive it was already nerfed. But I think it's still, people don't give it enough credit. I think it's still somewhat decent. The problem with Distortion for me, it would definitely still be A tier in my opinion if the token count had not been nerfed. It was extremely unhealthy before. People used it to rat in corners for hatch and hide and not help their team. And now having the requirement of having to be in chase to get tokens is really good. I think that was a really, really good change. However, limiting it to 2 tokens and only starting with 1 was a completely unnecessary nerf in my opinion. And that brings this down to B tier. Again, still not good or bad, but it's just not impactful like it used to be. Next we have Poised, and this perk actually received, I don't think it received a buff since the last tier list. I might be wrong about that though. But yeah, Poised makes it so that whenever you get on a generator, you see the killer's aura for a little while, and then once the generator pops, you lose your scratch marks for a pretty decent amount of time. I think it's like 20 seconds. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I guess it's not good or bad. The aura reveal when you get on a gen, see the killer, especially if you do it at the start of the trial, is really nice to have. Still not really impactful though. Next we have Solidarity, and this is a perk that makes it so that when you heal a survivor while you are injured, you gain 70% of your missing healing progress. So if I, was at 0% healed and I heal somebody else who's injured, then after I'm done with that, I'll be 70% healed. So you can never get to fully healed from this perk, because it's always 70% of the missing healing progress. And even if you're only like 1 tap away from getting healed, like 70% of that is still not 100%, you know what I'm saying? So you'll never get fully healed from this, but it does save quite a bit of time if you're trying to get 2 people healthy. Usually that would be a 32-second investment with no perks. With Solidarity, it becomes, doing some quick math, like 21 seconds, 21, 22 seconds. So yeah, I mean, it saves quite a bit of time. But again, it's a healing perk, hard countered by Plague and Legion if you play correctly. So, all right, next we have Better Together. This is a perk that reveals the aura of a generator that you're working on to your teammates, so they can work on it with you, I guess. And yeah, that's kind of all that it does. I think there might be another effect. I never see this perk. Oh yeah. Whenever the killer downs a survivor while you're repairing a generator 2, the auras of all other survivors are revealed to you for 10 seconds. So you get your teammate auras outclassed by Bond. You get to see the generator that your teammates are working on, or you get to show your generator to your teammates. I mean, it's fine, just not impactful. All right. Next, we have Fixated. And this makes you walk a little bit faster. Makes you walk 20% faster, and it makes it so that you can see your own scratch marks too, which if you're running it for that reason, take the perk off. Like that effect is just very, very not worth it, okay? The positive part about Fixate is that it makes you walk 20% faster. However, more often than not, when I see people using this perk, they're not using it for the right reasons, even if they are using it for the walking speed. If you are using this perk to walk around 20% faster with your sprint burst because you're trying to save your sprint burst, you're using it wrong, okay? This perk is good in the hands of a very, very good survivor player that knows how to shift tech on every tile in the game, and that is the only time this perk is good. As I stated in, the beginning of this video, perks that need niche situations to be good are not good. And so because this perk is only good on the very best of Survivor players who are using it correctly, I cannot in good faith put it above B tier. Again, I try to judge perks based on their usage by the average player in the average typical game of Dead by Daylight. Typical players playing average typical games is the most common situation. So that is how we judge the perk. Next, we have Camaraderie, and this is like, I don't want to say it's a worse version of Reassurance, because it's technically not. It only works on second hook, but it works for you rather than others. So let me explain. Camaraderie activates if you are on your second hook and a teammate comes within, I think, 16 meters of your hook. If that happens, you will gain 34 more seconds on the hook. This is a perk that you will see chosen over Reassurance, particularly in high-level Swifts. And the reason for that is because it is longer on second stage. That is more time that you get on second stage. And second stage is a little bit more important in a game of Dead by Daylight. Somebody's closer to death when they're on second stage. And like I said, it is 4 seconds longer. However, again, in the majority of situations, in the average typical game of Dead by Daylight, used by the average typical survivor, Reassurance is going to be better than Camaraderie. Because Reassurance can be used on your teammates, it can be used on both hook stages, and can buy a collective total of 60 extra seconds on the hook. Camaraderie can only do 34 total. They can only work on second stage. And it's really only impactful in a very well-coordinated Swift. So I cannot, in good faith, say this is a better perk than Reassurance. I believe Reassurance, generally speaking, outclasses Camaraderie, and that is why Camaraderie is B tier, because it's outclassed by an A or S tier perk. Next, we have Second Wind. This is an anti-tunnel perk that activates after you have healed a survivor for a total of a total of 1 health state. That means if you heal 2 teammates to half, that counts. You also don't gain as much progress towards this if you double a heal with somebody else. So keep that in mind. You have to heal the equivalent of 1 total health state on a survivor for this to activate. And once it is active, it can be used once, but you don't get to choose when it gets used either, so keep that in mind. When you come off the hook, you will be broken. But after 20 seconds, you will become instantly healthy. So for that reason, it is an anti-tunnel perk, because it really is only going to help you if you're being hard tunneled off the hook. It also, again, has the requirement of having to heal another survivor, which, if you're being hard tunneled, probably isn't happening. If you're being hard tunneled, you probably haven't had the chance to heal a teammate. Not always, but more often than not. So keep that in mind. It is a little bit more niche than other anti-tunnel perks. And of course, like I said, it is hard countered by not just Plague, but any broken status effect you might have. Next, we have Any Means Necessary, and this is a perk that allows you to reset pallets. You can pick up dropped pallets. You can't fix broken ones, but you can pick up dropped pallets with this perk. And it'll show you the aura of any dropped pallets as well. The reason this perk is B tier for me is because, yes, even though you can reset pallets, it requires the killer to not be breaking pallets for you to do so. And let's be honest, most killers are not leaving a whole bunch of pallets down, at least not good pallets, right? They might leave, really small 50-50s dropped, in which case it's not going to make a difference if you pick that up or not. That pallet is still, next to useless. But they're not leaving like god pallets downed, or like even good fillers downed for the most part. You know what I mean? So It does require a level of killer input that you cannot determine or know when you go into the trial, that I feel like is a bit too reliant on that. I feel like if killers in general just like didn't break a lot of pallets, maybe this would be better. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just because of my playstyle as a killer main. I don't leave very many pallets down unless I know it's not going to be a problem for me later. You know what I mean? Next, we have Lucky Break, and this is another one of those perks that, if combined specifically with Overcome and Iron Will, it is maybe not S tier, but A tier for sure. On its own, though, it's just not impactful at all. Lucky Break activates for 60 seconds after you get injured, and in that time, you will leave no scratch marks and no pools of blood. Keep in mind, you will still make grunts of pain. Okay, you will still make grunts of pain, but you will not make scratch marks or pools of blood. People pair this with Overcome because they get a longer speed boost after getting hit, and they can, quickly run and hide behind a wall or something like that. They'll also do that with Iron Will, because they won't have any grunts of pain. But of course, you can't use Overcome and Iron Will together, so keep that in mind. But on its own, I feel like in most situations, maybe on an indoor map, but in most situations, your scratch marks and pools of blood being hidden are not enough to conceal you from the killer. Plus the base kit speed boost you get. It's just going to be tough to lose line of sight quickly enough. And then also not get found after. You know what I mean? It's just, I feel like it's kind of just not very impactful on its own. Next we have For the People, and this is an interesting perk. It's kind of like Shoulder the Burden, but for health states. And so you might be asking, well, why is it not S tier? So For the People, you can heal somebody else, and while you're healing them, you press a button and you switch health states with them. They become healthy instantly, you become injured instantly, but you also become broken for 60 seconds, I think. So a lot of the time you'll see this used in anti-slug builds, you'll see it used in anti-tunnel builds, because it can be good for preventing that situation. But once again, it suffers the same thing that all those healing perks do. It is hard countered by Plague, Legion if you play correctly, as well as any other broken status effects or perks that cause broken. It's just, yeah. Or add-ons that cause broken. I always forget about those. Next we have Built to Last, and this is a tough perk to rank because I feel like its strength varies a lot by the type of item that you're recharging. So Built to Last, once you have an empty item, you can go into a locker for 8 seconds and recharge your item to 99% of its charges. So basically exactly how many it had before. But then each time you do it after, it goes down to 66% and then 33%. So you really only want to use this once for starters, for it to even be worth it. But even if you only use it once, the only item that this is worth using on is a Commodious Toolbox. It is the only item where you will get back all of the time you spent in the locker. Even a med kit, okay? Med kit base self-heal speed is 24 seconds. So spending 8 seconds in a locker to recharge your med kit that already wastes 8 seconds of time when you use it, because again, you get healed by a teammate in 16 seconds, not worth it. Flashlight that doesn't, give you any more time on generators, not worth it. Keys, not worth it. I don't even know if it works on keys in Fog Files, actually, because it's not like a bar in terms of charges. It's a number. So I don't know how that works actually with keys or maps or Fog Files. But the only item that this is worth using it on is a Commodious Toolbox. If you do use it on a Commodious Toolbox, I would argue this perk is A tier. But if you use it with any other item, it's C tier. If not D tier, actually. Actually, it'd probably be D tier, yeah. Because the thing that all D tier perks have in common is the time waste, the time sink, okay? All of these perks are throw perks, okay? They are time sink perks. Built to last, if you use it on the wrong type of item, is absolutely a time sink. So I put it in B tier because when you account for all the possible different types of items, I feel like it averages out to B tier, but it is extremely dependent on the type of item that you're using. Next, we have Desperate Measures, and this is a perk that shows you, or excuse me, it doesn't show you the auras. It gives you a 14%, maybe 12%. It's one of those two, 12 or 14% heal speed increase based off of how many people are injured, dying, or hooked. So you heal fastest when everybody is injured, dying, or hooked. This isn't very common, okay? The only times you'll have a situation, really, not the only times, but most of the time when everybody is injured, hooked, or dying, you're either up against a plague or you're up against someone with an anti-heal build, or you're up against a legion and you're playing correctly, and in which case you don't need a heal perk. And once again, it is still a healing perk, so it is hard countered by plague, legion if you play correctly. You're gonna hear me say this a lot, okay? It's the reason all of these heal perks are kind of condensed into B tiers, because none of them can supersede B tier for me, due to that one tiny thing called plague. All right, next we have Fast Track, and this was a perk that was S tier for a few weeks. Definitely game-changing in nature during that time. Might have said top of A, not sure, because it did have one tiny thing that made it kind of tough to change the outcome of the game, but we won't talk about that. So we'll talk about what it is now, which is B tier. And that is because this perk gives you, for each time you unhook a teammate, you get a token. And each time you hit a great skill check, you spend all of your tokens, which is up to 3, and you can get 5 charges permanently knocked off a generator for that time. So you can get up to 15 charges off if you have a full 3 tokens, if you've saved your teammates off the hook 3 times. Now, like I said, I think before it received this change that made it B tier, it was too strong. And now I'd say it is in a really good spot. I think requiring somebody to go and get the saves themselves to go and get the tokens for this perk is a lot better than getting them passively. It forces the gen rusher, if there is one, designated one or non-designated, to get up and get off the gen and put themselves in harm's way by going for that save to get the tokens. And the maximum amount of tokens you can get, if you get every single save in the game, you get each of your teammates for each of their 3 hook states, you can get up to 9 tokens. Obviously not at a time because it's a max of 3. You can get up to 9 tokens. And again, each token is worth 5 permanent charges off the gen. So that's 45 permanent charges total off of gens, which will save you about 45 seconds. Yeah, it's not good, it's not bad, but it's not nearly as impactful as it used to be. 45 seconds is about half a generator, which is less than most killers can give, I guess, with perks like Pop or Pain Res. I feel like a lot of people forget, with the right set of regression perks, killers can make it so that survivors have to repair like 6, 7, 8 gens, depending on the lineup of perks that they have. And Fast Track negates about half a gen. If you get every single save that there is to get, And I don't know about you guys, I don't think, maybe I'm just genuinely forgetting, I can't remember a time where I got every single hook rescue in a game. Trying to or not trying to. Like, it's just, getting that full 45 charges off the gen is just like extremely, extremely rare. And again, good perks don't need niche situations to be good. Next, we have Smash Hit. Another example of a perk that's in B tier because it is outclassed by an A or S tier. The nice thing about Smash Hit is even though it is outclassed by Sprint Burst and Live, it only has a 20-second exhaustion. So if you do get to use it, you only have to wait 20 seconds to use it again, assuming you're like walking and chasing stuff. But yeah, just not a bad perk, just outclassed by Sprint Burst and Live. Next, we have Blast Mine, and Blast Mine is kind of like a silly fun perk. After repairing 20% of a generator, you can put this trap on the generator, and if the killer kicks it, they'll get blinded and stunned for 5 seconds. Yeah, it's a fine perk. It's more of a silly meme perk than an actual good perk. Anybody who uses Blast Mine is not using it for its strength. They're using it because they find it fun, and that's okay. It's okay to have perks that are fun. And my favorite thing about Blast Mine, and my favorite thing about not just Blast Mine, but a lot of these other perks in this tier, Flashbang, Chemtrap, Bada Bada Boom, Wiretap, is they are activated by doing something that you would already be doing anyway, which is gens. That is what makes these perks so well-rounded and balanced, in my opinion, is they don't require you to do a side objective to get it. And that is so, so important to maintaining a balanced perk, or a perk that's even somewhat worth using, is that however you would activate it anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's a fine perk. And speak of the devil, next is Flashbang. And this is a perk that after repairing, I think it's 40% for Flashbang. It might be 20, but I think it's 40% of a gen for Flashbang. And you get in a locker, you press a button, you make a flashbang, and then you can use that to blind the killer. You can also use it to get saves, kind of like a flashlight. The only reason this is not good is because by using the perk, you are actively not doing the objective, which is generators. You can save your teammates from the killer's grasp 1,000,000 times, and it does not matter if nobody's doing gens. So, again, not a bad perk, but it's not really a good perk either. It doesn't impact the game in a good or bad way. Next, we have Rookie Spirit, and I feel like this perk is a little bit underrated. I usually see this like pretty low on tier lists, and I understand why, but I think I just define my tiers a little bit differently than some other people. But Rookie Spirit, basically just after you've hit 3 skill checks on a gen, you can now see the auras of any and all generators that are regressing. It's a very solid effect. It's good for new players to locate gens that they should be working on. And that's why it's called Rookie Spirit, The reason I feel like people put it kind of low is because new players don't really have access to this perk. It is paywalled behind Leon Kennedy. And if you're new to the game, you're probably not spending a whole lot of money on it. And, by the time you do unlock Leon, you don't really need this perk anymore. But just looking at the effect alone, I would say it's a solid perk. Not good, not bad, but solid. Next, we have Boon Circle of Healing. This is a perk that after you set up a Boon Totem, which takes 14 seconds, 28 if you do it on a Hex, within the range of the boon, you can see the auras of injured survivors, and you heal them 100% faster. So 8 seconds instead of 16 to heal. Now, that means you only have to heal someone or heal people twice within the range of the boon to get the time back. So it's not a time issue. This is why it's not D tier, but it is B tier because it's the heal perk. Again, same thing as I've been saying. Hard countered by Plague and Legion if you play correctly. Next we have Overcome. And this is an exhaustion perk that basically just increases the speed boost you get after you get hit by 2 seconds or 3 seconds. I think it's 2 seconds. It's a solid perk. However, it is just objectively outclassed by Sprint Burst and Live. It is also hard countered by all insta-down killers, Plague, Legion if you play correctly. Next we have Empathic Connection. This is a perk that reveals your aura to your injured teammates. Sorry, I don't want to misspeak here. What is the heal speed boost? Oh, 35%. Okay, yeah. 35% heal speed boost. At 35% heal speed boost. So not bad at all. But again, healing perk. Hard countered by Plague, Legion if you play correctly. I know I sound like a broken record, guys, but I just need to ingrain this into you. Altruistic healing perks are not, they're not necessarily bad, but they can never, ever be good for that reason. Okay, they can never be good, but they're not bad either, okay? It's a gamble when you choose to run them. Next, we have Parental Guidance, which is another perk from Yoichi. And this perk, I'm gonna have to read this one. I don't want to misspeak on this. I always mix this perk up with Troubleshooter. Okay. So whenever you stun the killer with Parental Guidance, you make no grunts of pain, you leave no pools of blood, you leave no scratch marks. For 7 seconds. So, I mean, yeah, this perk is one of those perks that I feel like if the killer notices you have it, you'll get use out of it exactly once. And that's assuming the killer's walking through pellets, too. A lot of killers just respect pellets. I mean, it's just part of their gameplay. So, assuming you get any value out of this perk, I feel like it is, I don't want to say over pretty quickly, but, you know, it's like a one-time thing, usually. It's not a bad effect, but it's not a you know, good or impactful effect either. All right, sorry about that. Had to take a quick little break there. So getting back into it, Inner Focus, Hattie Core. This perk reveals the aura of the killer every time they injure or down another survivor to you. And it also allows you to see your teammates' scratch marks at all times. Much like a few other perks we've covered so far. If you are using it for that second reason, that, you know, to see your teammates' scratch marks, you are using it for the wrong reason, take the perk off, okay? This perk you'll often see run with like a flashlight or flashbangs. Survivors will often use this to see the aura of the killer, see which way they're going to pick up facing, you know, so they can go in for a save. But it's also just solid information. Not impactful, but solid information. Next, we have Wiretap, which is a lot like Blast Mine. After you've repaired, I think it's 20%, might be 40% of a gen. You can put a trap on the generator. And once that trap is on the generator, you can see the aura of the killer when they come within a 16, I think it's 16, maybe 12 meter range of the generator. See their auras. This is especially good at a place like Shack or Main. You can trap the generator and then essentially have wall hacks on the killer in the entire building, around the shack, around the main building, whatever. It's solid, you know, it's more of a fun perk too, kind of like Blast Mine. It can definitely have its utility, but it's not really impactful. And of course, you know, stealth killers can hard counter this effect. All right, now we have gotten to it. Hyper focus. We talked about this a little bit earlier with Stakeout. What this does is, I'm going to read it because it is a little bit strange, the description, and I don't want to misspeak. Okay. Whenever you hit a great basic skill check, you earn 1 token up to 6. For each token, basic skill checks appear 4% more often, spin 4% faster, and whenever you hit the great, gives 30% more progress for each token. Keep that in mind. If you have 6 tokens, it's 180% more progress. So that means that instead of, 1 extra percent on the gen, it's, when you hit the skill check, it's like 2.8% if you have the full 6 tokens. Now, like I said before, it is extremely, extremely rare to see this perk run without this perk. You will almost never see somebody running hyperfocus without stakeout unless they are a cheater, because they have like, a program or a cheat that just lets them automatically hit great skill checks. This perk, I don't want to say it relies on stakeout because it doesn't. But I have met one person ever in my entire 10 years of playing Dead by Daylight that could consistently hit hyperfocus skill checks to the full 6 tokens without stakeout and without cheats. So it is just not common to see people running hyperfocus without stakeout. But funny enough, that's what keeps hyperfocus balanced on its own, is the fact that it is very, very difficult to get maximum value out of. You have to be extremely good at skill checks, okay? Stakeout removes all of the skill from hyperfocus, and that is what makes that combo S tier. However, hyperfocus on its own is a really well-balanced perk. It requires a lot of skill input. The effect isn't like too busted on its own. It's a solid perk all around. Not good, not bad, not impactful necessarily on its own, but you throw in stakeout and you have like the easiest great skill checks of your life with the most progress, and with, even, if you introduce some other perks or anything like that, you have gens that can get done in like 30 to 40 seconds with one person. Like, it's just insane. So yeah, I mean, hyperfocus stakeout is a combo that they really need to find a way to keep these perks strong. I don't want to say strong because they're not strong now, but they need to keep these perks solid on their own. They are now, without making them so synergistic together. Next, we have Fogwise. This is a really interesting perk to me. What this does is every time you hit a great skill check, the aura of the killer is revealed to you for a little while. This rewards, people who can hit a lot of great skill checks with some pretty solid, consistent information. Of course, this is hard countered by Mindbreaker, by stealth killers. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of just average. It's a nice little aura reading effect for players that earn it with hitting their great skill checks. But it does have some very obvious hard counters in the form of perks, in the form of killers, and it's just not an impactful perk. Next, we have Troubleshooter. This is the one I was saying I always mix up with Parental Guidance. And for that reason, I'm actually going to read it here so I don't misspeak. Okay. While being chased by the killer, you see the aura of the generator with the most progress, and whenever you drop a pallet, you see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. After the killer stops chasing you, this ends after 10 seconds. So, yeah, really nice little effect, especially seeing the aura of the generator with the most progress. This is really helpful so you don't accidentally bring the chase or the killer to a gen that's about to pop. But, I mean, seeing the killer's aura if you drop a pallet, also nice information, but not game-changing or impactful, really. Yeah, I mean, it's like a side grade to alert, I feel like. All right, next we have Dramaturgy. I know this one's going to piss a lot of people off. I really did try to stay objective with this because I feel like Dramaturgy, okay, for anyone who knows me or watches my streams, I'm a Dramaturgy hater. If Dramaturgy has no haters, I'm dead. This is like one of my least favorite perks in the game that isn't just like a straight up throw perk. I just really hate how overblown it is. I think this is one of the most overrated perks in DBD. Not the most overrated. We'll get to that pretty soon, actually. But Dramaturgy is it's like kind of like a gamble exhaustion perk. So what happens is you press the button, you do like this high knees animation for like 2 seconds, and then after that you get a random effect from the following 4. You can and while you do the high knees, I should say, you get 25% haste for 2 seconds. The random 4 effects that you can get are a random item with random add-ons. You scream, but nothing happens, you just scream. You get more of that 25% haste for 2 more seconds. So your 25% haste that you already had continues for 2 more seconds. or you get exposed for 12 seconds. Now, the funny thing is, if you ask people who swear by dramaturgy what the correct way to use it is, they'll all tell you to use it as soon as the killer is like getting within lunging distance of you. If the killer is about to get just close enough to you to lunge, you use it and dash forward with the 25% haste that's guaranteed to get out of that situation. Of course, you're not out of the situation. It's only 25% haste for 2 seconds. That's not enough to save your life right there, especially if you get the exposed. That's the problem for me, is that if you ask anybody how this perk is meant to be used, they'll give you that example, but then refuse to acknowledge what happens if you get exposed. If you do get the exposed, you are getting hit. It saves your life to possibly make it to the next resource, maybe an early game. By the time the late game has rolled around, this is useless, especially if you're getting exposed. The item is whatever, not impactful. The haste is the only truly good effect. And even then, it's not as good as like Sprint Burst or Light. It's 25% haste for 4 seconds maximum, okay? It's less haste for the same amount of exhaustion, 40 seconds, and it has the added requirement of you having to be healthy to use it. So it is useless against Plague and Legion if you play correctly. I will never understand people who swear by dramaturgy. This perk is so overrated to me. It is hard countered by so many things. It is just straight up outclassed by Sprint Burst Live, even honestly overcome, maybe not so much Balance Landing anymore with Trickster Solution and Fallen Refuge in the mix, but it's just so overrated to me. I don't know how anybody can look at this perk and be like, yeah, this is an S tier perk. Like, I feel like these people are genuinely delusional. I don't understand. Okay. Next we have Scene Partner, also from Nicolas Cage. What this does is when you look at the killer, you start screaming. And when you scream, it reveals the killer's aura for, I think, 6 seconds. And then after that, there's a chance that you'll scream again. And if you do, you get 2 more seconds of aura read. And then there's another chance you'll scream again and again and again and again. I think I've seen like up to 8 or 9 screams with this perk before. And if you get that, then that's like 20, 22 seconds of aura read. That can be pretty solid. Of course, it is a bit of a gamble, right? There's a pretty high chance that you'll only scream once or twice, but even then, still a solid effect. Not game-changing, not impactful, but a solid effect. Next, we have Chemical Trap from Ellen Ripley. This activates after you've done, I want to say 20% of a gen, much like Blast Mine and Wiretap, and you get this little trap that you can put on a pallet, a dropped pallet. And if the killer kicks the pallet, it'll like blow up in their face and then make them move 20% slower for 6 seconds. Now here's the thing. More often than not, if a killer sees you put a chem trap on a pallet, especially if it's not like a god pallet, they're not going to break it. They're going to walk around it, they're going to bloodlust you around it, and it's just going to end up being a waste of a chem trap. This on god pallets, though, can get you a pretty sizable amount of distance. So because of that possibility of it being like kind of useless or it being pretty decent, I feel like it kind of averages out to B tier. Next we have Light-Footed. This is also from Ellen, and what this does is while you're healthy, your footsteps are silent. I think okay. Oh yeah, whenever you do a fast action, like a fast vault or a fast exiting of a locker, I guess hypothetically, it has a 10-second cooldown. So this I see most often used with like flashlights or flashbang to sneak in for a save because the killer can't hear the footsteps, you know? So I guess it's, you know, all right. It's not impactful in any way, but it's a nice effect, I guess. Next, we have Lucky Star. This perk activates when you enter a locker, and after you exit the locker for, let's see, I don't want to misspeak here. How long is it? For 30 seconds after you exit the locker, you see the aura of the closest generator, the auras of other survivors, you make no grunts of pain, and you leave no pools of blood. So, solid information. It has a 25-second cooldown after you do that, by the way. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, decent information, fine effect. As far as like the no grunts of pain, no pools of blood. But it's not impactful. Next, we have Champion of Light, and this is a perk from Alan Wake. If you blind the killer, kind of like with Chemical Trap, they'll get the same kind of hindered, though I think it's 20% for 6 seconds as well. And basically all this does is it makes it so that when you blind a killer at a pallet, like while they're breaking it, you no longer lose distance. I mean, you don't gain distance, but you still, like, instead of like if you, for anyone who doesn't know, if you blind killers at pallets, you are losing distance actively when you do that. Just don't do that. It's not worth it unless you have Champion of Light, in which case you're no longer losing distance, but you're also not gaining distance either. So just keep that in mind. It's kind of like a funny, silly perk. It's not meant to be used or taken seriously. All right, next we have Wicked, and this is our first perk in a while that in the B tier that's just outclassed by an ARS tier perk. And the one that outclasses Wicked is Deliverance. Wicked is basically Deliverance, except you don't need the safe unhook requirement, and you don't get broken after you unhook yourself, but it's only usable in the basement. More often than not, even if you die near the basement, a killer will not be taking you to the basement, especially if it's your first hook, because they will have Scourge hooks. I mean, Scourge Hook Pain Resonance is and has been for a very long time the most used killer perk in the game. And there's no Scourge hooks in the basement unless you have Monstrous Shrine. So this is just one of those perks I feel like is... It also has the added effect of showing you the killer's aura when you do get unhooked for a decent amount of time. And that's a solid effect, don't get me wrong. But it is just objectively outclassed by Deliverance. All right. Ooh, I know this one's going to upset some people. So we are now at Finesse. And in my opinion, Finesse is the single most overrated survivor perk in the game. It might be the single most overrated perk in the game. Okay? And I really like Finesse. Finesse is one of my favorite perks. It's so fun to use. I love it. But it is objectively not a good perk. And here is why. So Finesse, what it does is while you are healthy, it increases your vault speed, your fast vault speed, by 20%. Once every 30 seconds. After you use it, it goes on a 30-second cooldown. And of course, it also has the requirement of you having to be healthy. So that alone is enough to knock it out of like A tier, right? But once again, like Dramaturgy, like every other altruistic heal perk, you have to be healthy to use it. It is hard countered by Plague and Legion if you play correctly. So there's that. If that's not enough for you, okay, Finesse increases your fast vault speed by 20%. I know that sounds like a lot. Resilience increases your fast vault speed by 9%. Okay, that means, and I recommend you just go on YouTube, you guys. After you're done watching this video, go back to your YouTube search bar and type in Finesse versus Resilience versus Normal. And you will see a video pop up of a UE showcasing the perk on Mount Ormond Resort, okay? And it'll show you just how negligible the increase in speed is for Finesse and Resilience. The base fast vault speed is 0.5 seconds, okay? With Resilience, it's 0.45 seconds, and with Finesse, it is 0.4 seconds, okay? That means that even though I'm sure a lot of Finesse users can relate to this. And again, I love the perk too, so I can relate to this. It looks like a lot of the time you'll vault with Finesse and the killer will swing and they'll miss. And it'll be like, oh, haha, my Finesse saved my life. 80% of the time, because it is a 20% increase in the speed of your vault, 80% of the time that you fast vault with Finesse, you would not have been hit anyway. If the killer misses, when you use Finesse, 80% of the time, they would have missed you anyway if you had just not had finesse and fast vaulted normally. I know it sounds crazy to say, but it's just true, okay? It is simply just true. That finesse is, again, probably one of the most fun perks to use in DBD. As somebody who loves using finesse, I can say that. But it is also one of the most overrated perks in DBD. It is not a good perk, okay? It is not an impactful perk. It's not a bad perk, but it is not a good perk. All right, next we have Exaltation. This is a perk from Trevor that whenever you stun the killer with a pallet, it increases the rarity of your item and recharges it a little bit. So it's a nice little effect, especially for like medkits or toolboxes. Nice little effect, not impactful, but you know, and of course it requires the killer to walk into the pallets, which requires input from them that you can't know. I mean, it's just, it's, you know, it's fine. Not good, not bad, just kind of there. Next we have Eyes of Belmont. And I remember when this came out, people were like, this is the lethal pursuer of survivor perks. And I guess it kind of is, because it increases all of your aura reading by 2 seconds. However, that's kind of all it does. I mean, I think it has another effect, but I can't even remember what it is off the top of my head. Let me... Okay. Oh, yeah, it does have the other effect. Whenever a generator is completed, you see the killer's aura for 3 seconds. If that's what you're using it for, take it off. Put on darkness revealed instead. No, not darkness revealed. Dark sense, that's what it's called. We'll cover that perk in a little bit. It's not too far off. But if you want a perk that shows you the aura of the killer when you complete a gen, just equip dark sense. Like, however, again, the aura read duration increase of Eyes of Belmont, if you're using it in a full aura build, is nice to have. Not impactful, but nice to have. All right, next we have Clean Break, and I'm glad this perk is here. So, Clean Break is the only self-heal perk in the game that is not an objective detriment for you to use. If you are looking for a self-heal perk that, you know, gets the job done of self-heal without, like, throwing the game, this is the one. This is the only one. Okay, this is your only option. So, Clean Break activates whenever you are healing a teammate. And when you are healing a teammate, you can press a button and you'll become broken for 60 seconds. And when that 60 seconds is up, you'll become healthy. So the only reason this isn't a waste of time is because it activates when you're doing something that you would already be doing anyway. You are already positively contributing to the outcome of the game by healing your teammate, you know? And then you get like a, you know, passive heal in 60 seconds. Assuming you can survive for those 60 seconds, that is a really solid effect. That is a really solid effect. I have nothing bad to say about that. Of course, it can't be any higher than B tier because hard countered by Plague and Legion if you play correctly. But yeah, it checks the boxes. It does not throw the game like all other self-heal perks do. It, you know, is something you would already be doing anyway. Just, yeah, no notes. Solid perk. Next, we have Do No Harm from Arella Rose. This is kind of like a side grade to, I guess it's not really a side grade. It's actually just a worse version of Will Make It. But not by much. So not enough to be like C tier. Do No Harm increases your heal speed by 50% for each hook state that a survivor has. So if they're on first hook, you heal 50% faster. If they're on second hook, you heal 100% faster. So it's a fine effect. I have nothing bad to say about it, but once again, can't be higher than B tier because hard countered by Plague and Legion if you play correctly. I'm so sorry, guys. I know I sound like a broken record, but I just have to keep saying it. I have to keep saying it. Next, we have Duty of Care. And it's kind of hard to categorize this perk. I think the best way to to categorize it is as a team anti-tunnel perk. What this does is when you take a hit, a protection hit for a teammate, they will gain, I want to say it's like 25% haste for 2 to 4 seconds. Me. Oh, it's 6 seconds. Yeah, it's even longer than I thought. Whenever you take a protection hit, other survivors within 12 meters gain 25% haste for 6 seconds. Really, yeah, really solid effect. I have nothing bad to say about that. However, again, the activation requirement of a protection hit, while not like ridiculous or anything, is hard to activate outside of a Swift. You will not see that activating very often outside of a Swift, like in solo queue. So I can't in good confidence say that the average typical survivor game in this, with this perk being used by the average typical survivor, is good. You know, I'd say not impactful in most games. Next we have Come and Get Me, and this is a perk from Rick Grimes, one of the, not the first one on here, but one of the first ones on here to release since my last tier list. This is a team anti-tunnel perk, and basically what this does is when you unhook a teammate, you can crouch and not move and scream. You press the button and it makes you scream. I think it also gives them an effect though too. Okay, whenever you unhook a survivor while crouched and idle, use active ability button 1 to have injured and downed survivors within 24 meters, make no grunts of pain, leave no pools of blood, and leave no scratch marks for 15 seconds. And you scream, and the killer sees your aura for 5 seconds. So the whole purpose of this perk is exactly what it sounds like. It's come and get me. You know what I mean? It's like, don't go tunnel my teammate. Come after me instead. You see my aura. You know, heard me scream. They don't have any grunts of pain, pools of blood, scratch marks for 15 seconds. Ignore them. Come after me. That's exactly what it is. It's what it sounds like. So, yeah, however, it is B tier because it is just simply outclassed by Babysitter. I mean, it's a worse version of Babysitter. Yeah. Next we have Change of Plan. This is another new introduction from Dustin Henderson. And what this does is when you have an empty toolbox in your hand, you can get in the locker and turn it into a med kit. It's a really interesting perk. There's nothing like it. However, it is kind of a worse version of Built to Last because of this. Built to Last allows you to keep it as a toolbox and, you know, like use it again. You know, if you have a Modius toolbox with wire spool and socket swivels that's empty and you get into a locker and recharge it, you're saving a lot of time on gens. Change of Plan gives you the opportunity to have a med kit, which will either help you heal a teammate faster or heal yourself, which, don't get me wrong, isn't bad, but it is slightly outclassed by Built to Last. I feel like Built to Last is a little bit more consistent than this. Of course, it's not similar enough in terms of effect for me to say, like, okay, Built to Last is A tier and this is B tier, because we talked about Built to Last and why it's a B tier for me. But I feel like Change of Plan is also a solid, interesting idea. It fits into B tier pretty well. All right, next we have We See You. This is from 11. And I'm going to read this one because just hear me out. Okay. Whenever the killer sees your aura, you earn 1 token. Cooldown 10 seconds. When you have 4 tokens, spend them all. Then all survivors see the killer's aura for 15 seconds. So you will most often see people using this with Object of Obsession. And I would say that combo is pretty solid. You know, if you're a good survivor, that combo is probably like A tier. But on its own, it strictly relies on the perks and add-ons that the killer brings. And you can't know what the killer is going to bring into a game of Dead by Daylight. most aura, or not most, but a lot of aura perks are pretty popular. Lethal Pursuer, Barbecue, Nowhere to Hide. But once again, you cannot know what the killer is going to bring. And therefore, banking one of your perk slots on that they might have aura perks is just simply not worth it to me. I feel like it's just, yeah. With Object of Obsession, you force the killer to read your aura. So, of course, you get tokens like that. But there's no other perk, except, I guess, Come and Get Me, that can, like, force an aura read on the killer. And therefore force value out of this perk. So, yeah, I mean, it's still not bad, though. I mean, if the killer does have aura reading, 15 seconds for the whole team is not bad at all. All right, next we have Flow State. We talked about this a little bit earlier. This is kind of like No One Left Behind, but it's also kind of like Fire Up, but for survivors. So what it does is every time a gen is completed, you get a token. And then for each token that you have, you get a small speed boost in your Unhook and Heal speed. What is the speed boost? 10% per token. You also bless and cleanse totems faster too with that. So it's blessing, cleansing, unhooking, and healing, 10% per token. So by the end of the game, when all the gens are done, it's 50%. So this is solid. Obviously, it is dependent on how far you make it into the game. You know, the more gens get done, the more beneficial the perk becomes, much like Fire Up, like I said. Yeah, I mean, it's not really good, not really bad. Of course, the most interesting or like beneficial part of this to a lot of survivors is the heal speed that you get, increasing as the game goes on. But I feel like at that point, it's just like a worse version of Bonnie Knowledge or Will Make It or something like that, or even Do No Harm. But again, the heal part, hard countered by Plague and Legion if you play correctly. So I promise you guys won't have to hear that for that much longer. Most of C tier doesn't have a lot of healing perks in it. Yeah. All right, next we have the final perk in the B tier. This is Wide Open Throttle from the newest survivor, Shane Wigwas. What this does is when you fast vault a pallet, has to be a pallet, can't be a window, you will get 15% haste for 3 seconds, so like a worse live, but the pallet gets picked up and blocked for 60 seconds. And then the perk also goes on a 60-second cooldown. So this perk is weird. I know a lot of people, and at face value, it sounds good. But you have to remember, okay? 15% haste means that at best, you'll be 5% faster than 110 killers, and for 115 killers, you will be the same speed as them, okay? Don't get me wrong, that's not bad, okay? But if you use this on a pallet that the killer would have had to break, like Shack, for instance, or any of the god pallets on Trickster's Delusion, or the god pallet in the hallway downstairs on Midwich, like any god pallet, okay? Any pallet that the killer would have had to break, okay? You are essentially giving them, I don't want to say free distance because the survivor's job is to get distance, but you're allowing them to close the gap between you and them a little more easily. It just cancels itself out. Yes, you get 15% haste for 3 seconds. You match the killer's speed for 3 seconds. But they also now don't have to break a pallet and take 2.8 seconds to do that. So the pallet just gets picked up, they can keep walking, and you won't actually gain a whole lot of distance on them. You might gain a teeny tiny bit of distance depending on the pallet, but this isn't like it, like if you're wanting a perk that gives you haste after vaulting, just run live. You know what I mean? And on top of that, if it is like, you know, if you use this on a pallet, it gets picked up and nobody can use it for 60 seconds. If it's the only one in the area, you're just screwed. So I don't know. To me, this perk is like extremely overrated. I feel like people are just misunderstanding how distance works in DBD. You have to remember that if the pallet gets picked up, that means the killer doesn't have to break it. So it's honestly like it could end up working against the survivors on certain pallets. All right. C tier. Now we are getting into the perks that are genuinely just bad. Just as a reminder, C tier perk is defined as a niche or bad effect not worth using. All of the perks here on their own are simply not worth it. For whatever reason, which we'll get into for each specific perk, of course, but they're just not worth it. A lot of them require you to engage in a side objective, or the effect is just mediocre. Yeah, just whatever. Okay, starting with Dark Sense. We talked about this a little bit with Eyes of Belmont. So what not Darkness Revealed, I keep saying that. Dark Sense does is it reveals the aura of the killer if they are within 24 meters of you when you pop a generator for like, I want to say 5 or 6 seconds. It might be longer than that though. The problem with this perk is that it has the 24-meter requirement. Now, the nice thing about it is if they're not within 24 meters of you, you'll get the aura reveal when they come within 24 meters of you. So you'll get the aura reveal pretty much no matter what, unless the killer is like undetectable or a stealth killer or something. But I mean, it's just, this perk is not worth bringing. Like, you don't need to see the killer's aura when they're that close to you. After you pop a gen, I mean, the terror radius will tell you if they're coming. This is not going to make any difference in your games. And if anything, it's just not worth the perk slot. That's what you'll hear me say about a lot of these perks. Next, we have Lightweight, and I've been seeing an increase in the usage of Lightweight more with the Sprint Burst, Vigil, Ghost Notes, Lightweight gimmick build. But on its own, this perk is utterly useless. All it does is it makes your scratch marks disappear a little faster and makes them a little more spread out. That's it. That is all it does. It's not a good perk. Not worth it at all. Next, we have Premonition. I might be underestimating the value of this perk since it is an audio cue only perk, and therefore I cannot experience its effect. But to my knowledge, this is widely considered to be a not good perk. Basically, it gives you an audio cue when the killer comes within, like, it's a really weird requirement. I need to look it up so I don't misspeak here. Yeah, okay. And also, okay. So, Premonition. Oh, okay. Heck. All right. You receive an auditory warning upon looking in the killer's direction within a 45-degree cone within 36 meters. Like, what is that? That is such a bad perk. It's not even funny. And it has a 30-second cooldown, as if that effect is needing or deserving of a 30-second cooldown. Like, yeah, terrible perk. Don't ever bring this into a game of Dead by Daylight if you like good perks. Next, we have Plunderer's Instinct, and this reveals the auras of chests. I think it's not every chest, but it's like chests within like 64 meters of you, maybe. Yeah, within 64 meters, you can see the items sitting inside open chests too, and items dropped in the environment. And it also increases your odds of finding items of higher rarities in chests. Why are you searching chests anyway? Searching chests in DBD is one of the biggest time sinks that there is. Nothing you can find in a chest is going to be worth it, except a Commodious Toolbox. It takes 10 seconds to open a chest. The only thing that can give you back that time, I think a Mechanics Toolbox could do it too, but still. Like, just, no. We should not be searching chests in DBD, ever. Ever. It's not worth it. Unless you're, like, injured in Death Hook and desperately need a medkit, like, just, no, never. All right, next we have Slippery Meat. And this perk basically just increases your chance to self-unhook by a teeny tiny bit. That's it. That's all it does. It's a god-awful perk. I feel like this is kind of a noob trap of a perk because, like, when you're brand new to the game and you see the prompt, like, attempt self-unhook, like, all of us tried that at one point. Of course, now you can't do that in the game anymore. Like, you can't just at base have the option to try to unhook yourself, but if you equip this perk, you get that chance. So, like, I feel like people will read that, like, new players will read the description and be like, oh, that sounds good. Like, I can unhook myself. No. Take this shit off. This is a dog dookie buns perk. All right, next we have Small Game, and this one is actually, I believe, pretty similar to Premonition in terms of the description. It's like 45-degree cone within a 36-meter radius. Like, let me... this here. Within 12 meters of you, whenever you look at a totem in a 45-degree cone, you hear a sound cue. 10-second cooldown. Whenever a survivor cleanses the totem, you earn 1 token up to 5. For each token, the cone is 5 degrees smaller. Because, yeah, this perk needs a 10-second cooldown, and it needs the smaller cone radius every time a totem is cleansed. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, what the fuck is this perk? This perk is so bad. There are a million perks that you could bring into a game of Dead by Daylight to help with hex totems. You could bring a map. Just bring a map if you want to find hex totems. That'll show you exactly where they are for absolutely nothing besides your item slot. Or bring Detective's Hunch, like we talked about. This is terrible. Don't ever use this perk. This is awful. All right. Next we have Spine Chill. I'm sure you guys are noticing a lot of the general perks are listed here. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Spine Chill. This also is like, I don't think it's a cone this time, but it's like a really weird description that I need to look up to have correct. Okay. Whenever the killer is within 36 meters of your location and looking at you with a clear line of sight, Spine Chill activates. Warns of the killer's proximity and their potential awareness of your location by lighting its icon. It increases your action speeds for blessing, cleansing, gate opening, healing, repairing, sabotaging, unhooking, and unlocking by 6%. This effect lingers for 0.5 seconds after the killer loses line of sight or exits the activation range. Now listen, I know this perk doesn't sound that bad, but it is. Like, it's clearly designed for new players who are scared of the killer and want to know when the killer is arriving. But guys, that's what the terror radius is for. Like, that is what the terror radius is for. This perk has a 36-meter range. The average or normal terror radius of a killer is 32 meters. This is never going to help you. This is, like, never, ever going to help you, except maybe against, in very niche situations, against stealth killers. Like, this perk is just a waste of a slot, okay? It is the definition of a niche perk. Not worth it. All right. Next we have Calm Spirit. This is a perk from Jake Perk that makes it so that you don't scream. Like, you literally cannot scream. If the killer brings like a perk or their power makes you scream, none of that will make you scream. However, in exchange for that, your totem cleansing and chest unlocking speeds are drastically decreased. You also, if you cleanse a totem or open a chest, it makes no noise either. But that's like, I mean, the way I look at this perk is there's like 3 different effects, and regardless of the reason you're using the perk, whether it's to not scream, whether it's for the slower speeds, whether it's for the, I guess technically it is 2 effects because you wouldn't use it for the slower speeds, of course, but if you're using it to not scream, or if you're using it for the silent totem cleansing or chest opening, regardless of why you're using this perk, it is not worth it. It's just not worth the slot. Why does it matter to you if you don't scream? You know? Like, I feel like unless you're going against a doctor or a clown or somebody with like ultimate weapon, which is an extremely rare perk, the only time you're ever going to scream is when you go down or when you get hooked. Like, it's not, this is never worth the perk slot. Next we have Streetwise. I was really hoping this perk would be higher because it did receive some buffs. Here, I'm going to have to read this so I don't misspeak. Oh, no, that's the old version of the perk. Oh, okay. The first time you deplete an item's charges, you see the killer's aura for 8 seconds. Okay. Whenever you loot an item from a chest, it has 80% more charges. Okay. I mean, the problem with this is that it's just not worth the perk slot. Why are we searching chests? It's the same thing I discussed with you guys with Plunderous Instinct. Searching chests in DBD is a waste of time. Always. Always, always, always. It is just not worth it, okay? It's just not. I guess the depleting an item charges, you see the killer's aura for 8 seconds, that's nice, I guess, but it's not... Like, how often are you fully depleting an item besides a toolbox, maybe. I don't know. It's just, it's not, yeah, not worth the perk slot at all. All right, next we have Urban Evasion, and what this does is it increases your crouch walking speed by like 90%, I think. So you kind of like, you're kind of zoomy, you're like zoom scooting or something. I don't know, like you're like, you just crouch around really fast. That's it. Not worth the slot ever. I mean, I know a lot of people are using it right now because Jason just came out, and a big counter to Jason being able to track you and his omnipresent evil is crouching around. But even then, just play the game. Like, just play the game. Take Chase, force him to come out of his omnipresent evil. Just stop crouching around, guys. Come on. Or are we scared of the killer in the big 26? Let's let's get it together. Like, I'm sorry, Urban Evasion is not worth the perk slot. All right, next we have Object of Obsession. We talked about this a little bit earlier with We See You and Isaac Belmont. On its own, though, Object of Obsession, again, on the average typical survivor, in an average typical game of Dead by Daylight, this perk is not good, and it is not worth the slot. Object of Obsession can be pretty solid on good survivors and in the right combos, but on its own, again, on the average typical survivor, this is a waste of a slot. You would be much better off bringing something like Alert or Troubleshooter even for killer aura reading if that's what you want. Most of you are not good enough in Chase to be giving the killer wall hacks on you. Next we have Soul Survivor. Oh, excuse me, sorry, totally forgot. Object of Obsession, for anyone who doesn't own Lori, is also called Bound by Obsession. And then we have Soul Survivor, which is also called, let me check my thing here. Oh, I totally forgot. What is it called? Survivor. Down to the Last, okay? Down to the Last / Soul Survivor. Also C tier. This is a perk that basically increases, I believe it's your repair speeds and your gate opening speeds by like 25%, or what is it? Sorry, it's either 25 or 75. Okay. Each time a survivor other than yourself is killed or sacrificed, you gain a token. And each time you gain a token, it grants a stackable, up to a maximum of 3 tokens. It grants a stackable radius of 24 meters per token around you, up to a maximum of 72 meters, within which you are immune to the killer's aura rating abilities. Okay. And when you are the last survivor standing, you benefit from the following effects. Increases your repair speed by 75%. Increases your gate and hatch opening speeds by 50%. Like, this is the definition of a rat perk. I know repair speed increase of 75% sounds good, guys, but like, if you're a newer player, this is all you need to know. If you're the last survivor standing, do not sit on generators. Do not use the 75% repair speed bonus that this perk has to offer you, okay? Never, ever, ever sit on gens if you're the last survivor alive. Start looking for the hatch, okay? And if they close the hatch, try to open a gate. And in that case, I guess the 25% gate opening speed is, or 50% gate opening speed is fine. But this is a rat perk. This perk rewards you for staying alive when all of your teammates are dead, which is just a really bad thing to reward when it comes to survivor gameplay. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't run this perk. Next, we have Ace in the Hole, and I'm going to need to read this one because it's really, really bad. I think this is the chest one. Yeah, it is the chest one. Okay. Whenever you loot an item from a chest, it'll have a visceral or lower rarity add-on and a 100% chance for an uncommon or lower rarity add-on. So it's just a chest perk. I hate being a broken record, guys, but why are we running chest perks and searching chests in the big 26? Stop wasting time. Stop it. It's, yeah. Next, we have Open-Handed. And on its own, this perk is C tier because there's no, like, limited base kit aura reading that survivors have. Like, survivors do get to see their teammates when they're slugged or on the hook, but that doesn't have a range limit. And what Open-Handed does is it increases the range of all your aura reading by 16 meters, I think. So why would you ever use this perk on its own? You wouldn't. You'll most often see this perk paired with Kindred for additional aura reading on that. That's fine. It's a fine effect, but yeah, this perk, I judge perks by their strength alone, and this perk is useless alone. Next, we have Up the Ante, also from Ace. This is a perk that it does exactly what Slippery Meat does. Unlocks the ability for you to try to unhook yourself and increases the chance of that being done by a teeny tiny bit. It's exactly like Slippery Meat. It's just utterly useless. Left Behind. This is a perk from Bill. When you're the last survivor, you can see the hatch, the aura of the hatch, within like 24 meters, I think. This is a rat perk. Don't use this. Don't get accustomed to letting your team die just so you can get perk value. So we have Pharmacy. This decreases the sound of chest opening and guarantees a medkit when you open a chest. Okay, not worth it. Bring a medkit into the trial. Like, yeah, no. Vigil. This one's going to piss a lot of people off. I know that. On its own, Vigil simply cannot guarantee value at all. Vigil, again, I said this before with Sprint Burst. When you combine Sprint Burst and Vigil, S tier combo, 100%. Vigil on its own, because again, we have to judge perks by their strength alone, utterly useless, okay? Yes, the effect itself isn't bad, but again, you can't know if the killer is going to bring like Hemorrhage and Mangle perks or Hemorrhage and Mangle add-ons or something that'll exhaust you or something that'll make you broken or anything like that to make your status effects go away sooner. If you have to rely on what the killer is going to bring for you to get Vigil value, you won't be getting very much value. It's not a good perk on its own. Next, we have Tenacity. This increases your crawl speed and makes it so that you can recover while crawling, like while you're in the dying state. Super niche effect. And on its own, next to useless. You'll never see anybody using this on their own. You'll most often see it with Unbreakable or Flip Flop or Power Struggle or all three. But on its own, it's useless. Boil Over. This is a perk that makes it so that when the killer drops from a height while carrying a survivor, they gain 33% of their missing wiggle progress. So a lot of the time you'll see survivors abusing this by dying in really inconvenient spots with no hooks nearby, or you'll see it run by survivors who have teammates that are running Sabo builds, stuff like that. But on its own, I don't think I have ever been screwed by this perk on its own as a killer main. So Diversion. This is a silly fun perk. Gives you a pebble that you can throw, and when you do, the pebble will make a loud noise notification and leave some scratch marks. It's supposed to be a trick the killer kind of perk. It's fun, it's silly, but it is not good. Same with Head On. I mean, it's kind of a silly fun perk, but it's also an exhaustion perk, so that's another reason it's in the C tier. The fact that this perk exhausts you is beyond me. It allows you to, after hiding in a locker for 3 seconds, you can fast exit it and stun the killer if they're in front of it for, I think, like 3 seconds. I mean, it's silly, it's fun, but it's not good or anything like that. Super niche, not worth it at all. Buckle Up, same thing, super niche, not worth it at all. It's technically an anti-slug perk. If you heal a survivor from the dying state, they'll get, I think, like 50% haste. It's pretty sizable. But I mean, there are just so many better anti-slug perks. Wiggleth, MFT, like, haste is irrelevant if the killer's right on top of you, so. Next we have Flip Flop. This perk converts your recovery progress into wiggle progress at a 50% rate. So if you're 100, or I guess you can't really be 100% recovered, but if you're 50% recovered, say, you'll have 25% wiggle progress when the killer picks you up. Again, you'll often see this in the builds of survivors whose teammates have Sabo builds, because they often find themselves getting slugged, and if the killer picks them up again, or tries to pick them up after they've recovered quite a bit, they'll wiggle out almost for free. But again, on its own, very niche. I don't think you would ever see value out of this perk if you run it for 50 games straight by itself. Next we have Medal of Man, and this is a perk that activates after you've taken 3 protection hits. And once you have taken those 3 protection hits, you essentially have 1 free hit of invulnerability. It's not endurance. Okay, it is not endurance. This perk can be used with off the record. It can be used with dead hard. It can be used with borrowed time. It's just invulnerability. You will take a deep wound hit. You'll notice if you use like a dead hard or something after that, it'll still work. So, I mean, the activation requirement for this is just so bad. 3 protection hits. I can't remember the last time I took 3 protection hits in one game. This is ridiculous. This perk is awful. Take this off. Breakout. Another one of those perks that you'll find often in Sabo builds. Basically what it does is it gives you 7% haste if you're running next to a killer that's carrying a teammate, and they'll wiggle 25% faster. So again, you'll see it a lot of the time in Sabo builds, but on its own, useless. Red Herring. This is a perk that after you've been working on a gen for, I think it's like 1 second, it highlights the gen to you, and you can get in a locker, and it'll give a fake missed skill check to the killer. So they'll get a loud noise notification. The idea is you trick the killer into coming all the way over there, but like, at what cost? Then they, like, if you do it on a gen that's got progress, then they kick it, and you lose some progress. Like, what's the point of that? I've never understood this perk. I feel like it's such, just like it's so counterintuitive. Why would you want to trick the killer into coming to a gen that has to have at least 1% progress? Like, it just, I don't understand it. Especially when you could just be progressing the gen with the killer not there. So yeah, terrible perk. Blood Pact. This is a perk that gives you and the obsession haste if you guys stick together after you heal the obsession. I think it's like 7% haste. However, I mean, again, super niche. In the average typical survivor game, with the average typical survivor players, this will never see value. Again, since it requires a level of coordination that most survivors just simply don't have. And it requires you to stick together too. So if one of you is in chase and wants to keep that 7% haste, that now means that 2 of you have to be in chase, which is 2 people not working on gens. Soul Guard. This is a perk that allows you to fully recover from the dying state as many times as you want, as long as the killer has an active hex totem. It has a secondary effect of endurance after you've recovered from the dying state. That is what most people use it for. If you are looking for a perk that allows you to recover from the dying state, bring Boon Exponential or Unbreakable. This perk is not worth it for that reason. Most people combine it with something like Boon Exponential or Unbreakable for the endurance after they pick themselves up. But alone, this perk is not worth it. It's outclassed by so many other anti-slug perks. Visionary. This is a worse version of Deja Vu. This is a perk that allows you to see the auras of the 3 closest generators to you, not to each other like Deja Vu, to you, or it might not be the 3 closest. It might be any generators within like 32 meters of you. I think that's what it is. But you don't get a repair speed boost like you do with Deja Vu. And after a generator completes, this perk goes on a cooldown. It's just like, I know you guys are like, well, but it's outclassed by an A tier perk, so why is it not B tier? Because it's that bad. It doesn't deserve the B tier title. It's too niche. Its effect is too bad. It's just, yeah, no. Appraisal. This is a perk that allows you to rummage through chests, which is essentially like a second search of the chest. And yeah, that's it. I think it has a secondary effect too, but let me... Oh yeah, it also increases your rummaging speed. So yeah. Again, why are we searching chests? Terrible perk. God awful. Deception. This is a lot like Diversion. It's also a silly, funny, goofy perk meant to trick the killer. Basically what it does is it lets you run past a locker and you press the button that you would normally press to fast enter the locker, but instead of entering it, the locker will open, you won't go in, and you'll lose your scratch marks for a few seconds. So it's meant to just mess with the killer a little bit. It works exactly once. Once the killer knows you have it, they will never fall for it again. Yeah, just not a good perk. Power Struggle. Another perk that you'll often see combined with like Flip-Flop or Unbreakable. What this does is when the killer walks through a pallet while carrying you, if you have at least 15% wiggle progress, you can slam the pallet down on their head while they're carrying you and essentially pallet save yourself. Of course, this requires the killer to walk through pellets while they're carrying you, which most killers at a high level of play will not do. And on top of that, again, the 15% wiggle progress requirement makes it so that you kind of have to run flip-flop with it to guarantee that value. But again, perks that require other perks to be good are not good. Counterforce. This perk instantly jumps into, I wouldn't say S tier, but probably high A tier if the killer has like a full hex build. But on its own, again, you have to judge perks based on how good they are on their own. Counterforce is useless on its own. It requires the killer to be running hexes for you to get value out of, which you cannot know going into the trial. That's it. I mean, if the killer has hexes, it's good. If they don't, it's not. It's that simple, really. And again, average typical game of Dead by Daylight does not have a full hex build. Bite the bullet. This makes it so that you and the survivor that you're healing are just completely silent during the healing action. Like no healing sounds, no grunts of pain, none of that. And it also has like a lower penalty for missed healing skill checks, I believe. Yeah, this perk is just bad. I've seen it run in like a really niche build with Lucky Break, Overcome, and Self-Care. People will just like duck into a corner after Overcome and like start to heal themselves and be completely silent, and then the killer will lose them. At that point, you're dedicating 4 perk slots to a gimmick. It's just not worth it. And it's not worth it on its own either. Corrective Action. This is a perk. It's made for like strong, good players who are playing with new players. What it does is it makes it so that you get tokens every time you hit great skill checks. And then every time your teammates miss a skill check, it's turned into a good skill check. So it is literally intentionally designed to benefit like strong or experienced players playing with newer players. That's all it's made for. Just too niche. Dark Theory. This is a boon perk, Boon Dark Theory, that gives you 3% haste when you're running within the radius of the boon at all times. It's counterintuitive. This is why it's a C tier perk. In order to get value out of the perk, you have to be within the radius of the boon. But if you're being chased by the killer in the radius of the boon, they can hear it and instantly snuff it out. It's a counterintuitive perk. The haste is not going to be very impactful. And if it is, you're bringing the killer right to the totem to snuff it out for free. Residual Manifest. This is a perk that makes it so that when you search a chest, you're always guaranteed to get a flashlight. And on top of that, if you blind the killer, they will get the blindness status effect for like 30 seconds maybe. So they won't be able to see the auras of gens, hooks, their own totems, anything like that. More of a silly, funny perk. I see people run this with Blast Mine a lot. Not actually like worth it or good. Low Profile. This gives you no grunts of pain, no pools of blood, no scratch marks when you are the last survivor standing. Very clear on the wording there. Last survivor standing. So if the killer slugs for the 4K, this perk can actually kind of come in handy a little bit. You know, it'll prevent you from getting found by the killer for those 90 seconds. It activates for 90 seconds when you're the last survivor standing. So, I mean, it's fine, but it's just so niche. You will rarely ever see this perk actually get decent value. Reactive Healing. This perk gives you 50% of your missing heal progress if somebody is hit within 16 meters of you. 16 meters is a really tiny distance, you guys. It is not often that somebody is getting hit within 16 meters of you unless they're taking a protection hit for you. And if they are doing that, then the 50% heal progress isn't going to make a difference. You know what I mean? Yeah. And of course, you'll never get fully healed from it either, because again, it's like Solidarity, 50% of missing, 50% of missing, 50% of missing. Like it'll never close that teeny tiny gap, even at the end. Better Than New. This gives a small buff to any people that you heal. After you heal them, they get like a small increase in like totem cleansing speed, heal speed, like maybe unlocking, like chest on. It's really bad. If this perk applied to gens, like, you know, repair speed, it would be like a worse version of leader, at least. But this is like a way worse version of leader, like a significantly worse version of leader. If you were wanting to buff your teammates with like a little bit of, you know, boosting, like number boosting, just run leader. This is terrible. This is god awful. Potential energy. So this is a perk that allows you to essentially like store up gen charges. You can repair a gen, you get on a gen, and you stop progressing it for a little while. Like it just doesn't move the bar. And during that time, you can rack up a whole bunch of tokens. And then you can take those tokens and dump them all into another gen instantly. Not as permanent progress, just as progress. This is particularly good for dealing with 3-gen situations, but now that there is a base kit way to deal with 3 gens with the kick limit, this just isn't worth it, you know? Quick Gambit. A lot of people swear by this perk, but basically what it does is it gives a 5% repair speed bonus to your teammates while you are in chase. But once you get injured, it has a 40-second cooldown. 5% is nothing. 5% means that instead of the gen taking 90 seconds, it'll take 85 and a half. Like, it's nothing. It's literally nothing. And I get it, you know, if there are 3 teammates on gens, then it's, you know, a little bit better. But it's, even then, it saves what? A total. If you have all 3 of your teammates on gens the whole time you're in chase, and, you know, you don't get injured the whole time, let's say, or you're already injured the whole time, so it doesn't, the cooldown doesn't take into effect, then you save, 13 and a half total seconds among those 3 generators. It's not worth it. This perk is so overrated. Cut Loose. This is a worse version of Quick and Quiet. Quick and Quiet gives you the silenced vault once every 20 seconds. Cut Loose only gives you a silenced vault if you chain multiple vaults together, and it has a 45-second cooldown. Terrible. As you guys can probably tell, my explanations of these perks are getting a lot shorter because, well, I've been talking for a while, and also, like, I just don't have a lot to say about these perks. They're all ass. Friendly competition. Basically what this does is after you finish repairing a generator with a teammate, they get a 5% repair speed bonus for the next, like, I think 90 seconds or maybe 100 seconds, something like that. You take a 15% efficiency hit when you repair a gen with a teammate, and they get 5% back. That should tell you everything you need to know. Now we're getting into all of the teamwork perks here pretty soon. This is the first one, Power of 2. Honestly, I will explain what each one does, but I'm going to give the same reason why they're all bad right here and now, and that is because they require too much coordination for the result that they give, okay? Period. Teamwork Power of 2 gives 7% haste, or excuse me, 5% haste when you stay within 12 meters of a teammate after one of you heals each other. Background player. This one's going to piss a lot of people off too. Background player will never be good to me. This is the only exhaustion perk in the entire game which cannot be used in chase. Exhaustion perks were made for chase. If you can't use an exhaustion perk in chase, it is already a bad perk. Definitely a bad exhaustion perk. I will never be a background player truther. This perk is awful. If you remove the exhaustion status effect, it would be fine. Give it something else, like exposed or broken. I don't know. Something like that. Blood Rush. Yet another perk that... This is actually, I think, the only perk in the entire game. No. It is one of 2 perks in the entire game on both sides, and it is the only survivor perk that physically cannot be used without another perk. So you can imagine if I'm making a survivor perk tier list, trying to judge perks based on their strength alone, and we have one that literally cannot be used without another perk, this one is going to be like bottom of the barrel. The only reason it's not D tier is because it's not like an objective detriment to the team. But yeah, what this does is it allows you to recover your exhaustion for 60 seconds after you've been unhooked, so it's an anti-tunnel perk. Basically, you can really only use this like sprint burst or live. It's awful on its own. Teamwork Collective Stealth. What this does is it makes it so that your scratch marks it's basically like Power of 2, but for scratch marks. You stay within a small range of your teammate. You guys don't have any scratch marks after you've healed one another. Deadline. This one is a weird perk. I'm going to look this up so I read it correctly and don't misspeak. This isn't right. Sorry. Deadline. While injured, basic skill checks are 10% more likely to appear, and they appear in random places. Whenever you miss a basic skill check, you lose 50% less progress. This is so niche. This might be probably one of the most niche effects in the entire game. This is useless. Don't ever bring this. Invocation Weaving Spiders. This is a perk from Sable. It allows you to go into the basement and do a ritual for 60 seconds. And in exchange, you become broken for the rest of the trial. But all generators in the trial lose 10% permanent charges. So if you do this at the very beginning of the game at 5 gens, it's actually not that bad because, again, 60 seconds in the basement for 70 seconds total off of all your generators permanently. However, if you do this at any point after 4 gens left, it is a D tier perk. This is a time sink, waste of time. You're throwing the game by using it. You have to use this at 4 or 5 gens left, or it's not worth using at all. Next, we have Mirrored Illusion. This is another like mess with the perk or mess with the killer, silly, goofy perk. It allows you to spawn like hallucination of yourself on a generator for like the killer to see. It kind of has like a shimmer to it, so you can tell that it's fake. But a killer can fall for it like once, I guess, and swing at it. That's all it does, though, is it's just like a fake hallucination you could spawn of yourself on pretty much anything, I think. Gens, totems, gates, all that stuff. Just a silly, goofy perk, not actually good, though. Still Sight. This is a perk that when you're standing still, you can see the auras of, I want to say, totems and generators and the killer. Chests, generators, and killer within 24 meters. You have to stand still for 2 seconds, so you have to be doing nothing, obviously. Not worth it, not good. Rapid Response. This is supposed to be a counterpart to an exhaustion perk, so it's obviously not going to be very good on its own, but I, of course, am judging these perks on their own. What it does is it allows you to see the killer's aura for 2 seconds when you get exhausted. And it also has its own way of exhausting you by fast exiting a locker, I believe, is the activation requirement for that. So yeah, at best, by itself, you can fast exit a locker and see the killer's aura for 2 seconds. Absolutely, utterly useless. Teamwork Throwdown. This, I always mix this one up with the other Rick and Michonne teamwork perks. So let me look it up here. Don't misspeak. Whenever you blind or pallet stun the killer for 10 seconds, other injured survivors within 24 meters gain endurance and see the killer's aura. The effect itself is not bad, but I already explained what the problem is with all teamwork perks. Too much coordination required for an effect that's not that great. Conviction. I know this one's going to piss a lot of people off. Conviction might be up there with Finesse and Dramaturgy, one of the most overrated perks in modern Dead by Daylight. And what this does is it allows you to pick yourself up when you get to 25% recovery. If you've healed somebody, by the way, you have to heal somebody. Get this. And when you do, you get broken and you essentially get to stay alive for 30 seconds. And after that 30 seconds is up, you go back into the dying state. So this perk, in the extremely, extremely niche situation of the end game, in the right circumstances, if you die in the right spot, can save your life and make you escape, okay? But, again, good perks do not need niche situations to be good. It is outclassed by Unbreakable. It is outclassed by We're Gonna Live Forever Made for This. It is outclassed by Exponential. There is not a single killer perk in the game that requires you to shoot yourself in the foot like this and like give the survivors free pressure in order for you to get value out of it. Because at the end of the day, that's what Conviction is. By going back down, you are still forcing somebody to have to come and pick your ass up because you just didn't want to use Unbreakable instead. This perk is so bad. I can't believe that the entire Survivor player base fell for it. And this is why you guys keep getting bad perks, because you eat them up. You literally eat shit and then complain when behavior gives you shit. Last Stand. This perk essentially allows you to stun the killer with a vault once per trial. After 90 seconds of being in the killer's terror radius, it is active, and then you can vault a window into a killer and stun them for a little while. It's more of a silly perk. It can be used to save a teammate if timed correctly, but again, it's only usable once per trial, and it takes 90 whole seconds to activate. Definitely not worth it. Teamwork Toughen Up is what this is called, and I'm going to have to look it up because I can't remember what it does off the top of my head. When injured, whenever another survivor within 24 meters of you blinds or pallet stuns the killer for 30 seconds, you make no grunts of pain, you leave no pools of blood, and you leave no scratch marks. All right, I mean, it's literally just throw down, but the other way around, pretty much. It's for you instead of your teammates. And it, on top of that, like I said, with all of the teamwork perks, they're all bad because they require too much coordination for the little teeny amount of value they can give. Ghost Notes. Like I said before, when we covered Lightweight, this is a gimmicky perk that you'll often see in a full build with Sprint Burst, Vigil, and Lightweight. Ghost Notes makes your exhausted go away 10% faster, and it makes your scratch marks disappear faster as well. On its own, this perk is utterly useless, again, because if you don't have an exhaustion perk, which again, we're doing these perks based on their strength alone, then all you get is your scratch marks disappearing a little faster. Yeah, this perk is god-awful. Road Life. This is a weird perk, so I'm going to it up, read it out loud. Whenever you hit a basic great skill check, you earn 1 token, and whenever you miss a basic skill check, you lose 1 token. When you have 4 tokens, spend all tokens to heal 100% faster until you stop healing. This is probably the worst altruistic heal perk in the entire game. Why would you ever use this when Will Make It exists, or when Do No Harm exists, or when Desperate Measures exists, or any of the Body Knowledge, any of those other altruistic healing? This is awful. This is terrible. I can't believe this perk is the way it is. Bada Bada Boom. This is the Hem Trap for Windows. It has exactly the same activation requirement, except it can only be placed on windows instead of pallets, and that is why it is C tier instead of B tier with Chem Trap, because it requires the killer to vault a window, and once the killer sees you place it on a window that they probably weren't going to vault anyway, what makes you think they're going to vault it now? Like, it just, yeah. This is just a worse version of Chem Trap for Windows. The killers don't really vault very often anyway. Teamwork not change of plan. 11-1 is soft, but this one's full circuit. Sorry, Teamwork full circuit. What this does is it makes you repair 5% faster when you repair with a teammate, and it has an additional effect. Why can't I find it? Oh, and it increases the size of good skill check zones and grants that repair speed boost. So yeah, I mean, I've already explained why these teamwork perks are not good. Same applies to this. Extrasensory Perception. This is like a side grade to Still Sight, which we discussed before. And what Extrasensory Perception does is, after crouching for 4 seconds, you see auras in an expanding radius up to 44 meters. You gain Elusive, and you gain Oblivious. When you stop crouching, or after 11 seconds, your cooldown is 40 seconds. It's so niche. And it also gives you the downside of being oblivious. Like, it's just so bad. It's so bad. Next, we have Teamwork Soft Spoken. Again, we know why this is a bad perk, but what it does is it also increases your repair speed by 5%, like Full Circuit. And it also decreases the sound of repairs on the generator by like a few meters. It's really stupid. It's really bad. A Place for Us. This is like a side grade to bite the bullet. Instead of making the heal sound silent, it makes your grunts of pain silent. And it also makes you elusive. I think it's elusive. Whenever you finish healing the obsession, you both gain elusive for... Oh, wait, yeah, okay. While healing another survivor, you both gain elusive. But whenever you finish healing the obsession, you both gain elusive for 30 seconds. So yeah, it has the obsession requirement. It's too niche. It's too... The value is too unsure. Yeah. All right, cross-examination. Now, this is a perk that right now I would say is probably like B tier, but it is scheduled to get a nerf in a few weeks, and therefore I'm judging it based off of that state that we know it is going to be in. Like, they straight up said, like, this is going to get a nerf, and this is what the nerf is going to be. We just haven't put it out yet, so here it is. Cross-examination makes these, like, light marks that the killer leaves, kind of like scratch marks, but not. And if the survivor walks on them, they get elusive. However, the nerf that's coming to the perk, because that's what it does now, the nerf that's coming to the perk is that it won't be usable in chase. I think this perk is super overrated right now. People are acting like elusive in chase is the end-all be-all. I don't know, maybe I've just got really used to tracking survivors like really well because I can't use my ears to do it. And everyone who didn't have to get used to that is really struggling. But yeah, now that it won't be usable in chase, it's just completely and utterly useless. Terrible, awful, awful perk. All right, and now we are finally in the D tier. This is, just as a reminder, the perks that are so bad that you would genuinely be better off running nothing at all. These perks are a time sink. They are an active detriment to the team. If you use them, you are sandbagging your teammates due to the time investment that you will never, ever get back. Yeah, these perks are, if you use these, I'm not saving you from the hook. Like, that's how bad these perks are. Starting with self-care. This is a perk that allows you to heal yourself, but at 35% speed. This means that, you know, without any other heal boost or anything, which is how we need to judge the perk since it is being judged by its strength alone, it will take 45 seconds for you to heal yourself with this perk. Terrible. That's half of a generator, you guys. Technician. This is a perk that silences your missed skill checks, so it's good for beginners for that reason. But you lose an additional, I think 3%. Yeah, 3% for a missed skill check. You lose 13% total for a missed skill check. So because it actively makes your missed skill checks more detrimental, you lose more gen progress, you are sandbagging your team by using this. No, Mither. This is the only one that is not a time sink on this list, actually, I think. I might be wrong about that, but I think it's the only one. No, yeah, I'm looking right now. Off the top of my head, this is the only one that's not a time sink. But you're broken for the entire trial. You are objectively easier to down than your teammates because they have 2 health states and you have 1. Just don't use this perk. It's terrible. It's very, very bad. Inner strength. This one is gonna upset a lot of people. I know that, but it is what it is. I don't make the rules of math. Takes 14 seconds for you to cleanse a totem, which is probably dull. Let me put a little asterisk next to this. If the killer has hexes, this perk is like B tier. If the killer does not have hexes, which is true of the average typical game of Dead by Daylight, then this stays in the D tier. But anyway, it takes 14 seconds for you to cleanse a totem that is most likely dull, and then 8 seconds for you to be in a locker. That is 22 seconds to heal yourself. It takes 16 seconds to be healed by a teammate. This perk is a time sink. You are throwing the game by using this. Repressed Alliance. This is probably the single worst perk in Dead by Daylight. Just looking at the list here of the D tiers, I would say, yeah, it's probably the worst one. Imagine there was a killer perk that allowed them to sabotage their own hooks. Do you think you would see any killer players running that? Genuine question. No? Didn't think so. Yeah. That's what Repressed Alliance is. It is the survivor version of that. It allows you to block your own generators for 30 seconds. And there are people who genuinely believe this perk is good. Like, oh, well, then the killer can't kick it. Like, and It is better to eat the 5% kick in every situation rather than block yourself from your own objective for 30 seconds. Survivor mains are the only people I know that would be dumb enough to justify this perk and pretend that it's good in any circumstance ever. This perk is the worst perk in the entire game. If you use this, you are sandbagging your team. Boon Shadow Step. It's time sync. 14 seconds to bless a totem, 28 if it's a hex. And alone, with the effects of this perk, you will never earn this time back. Objectively bad. Clairvoyance. I'm gonna have to read this one because I know it has 2 effects. And I'm gonna forget one of them if I don't look it up. Alright, whenever you bless or cleanse a totem while not holding an item, use your active ability button for up to 12 seconds and within 64 meters. See the auras of chests, exit gates, generators, hatch, and hooks. You have to bless or cleanse a totem. That's 14 seconds, 28 if it's, if you're blessing a hex. Yeah. I mean, again, if the killer has hexes and you cleanse the hex instead of blessing the hex, this jumps up to like C tier, probably. But again, average typical game of Dead by Daylight, killer does not have hexes. This perk is a time sink and a god-awful perk. Overzealous, same kind of thing as Inner Strength and Clairvoyance. If the killer has hexes, solid perk. I'd say, honestly, probably B tier. But, again, average typical game of Dead by Daylight, killer does not have hexes. You can never earn your time back on this one. If you bless or cleanse a dull totem, that takes 14 seconds, and that only gives you 10% repair speed boost, which means you'll save 9. You will never get back those 5 seconds that you wasted, and you are sandbagging your team if you do that, so don't do that. All right, Scavenger. This one is also kind of weird. Gonna have to read this. While repairing and while your toolbox is empty, whenever you hit a great basic skill check, you earn 1 token. When you have 5 tokens, spend them all. Toolbox is recharged instantly, but you repair 50% slower for 30 seconds. 50%! You guys, that is crazy. That is absolutely insane. 50% slower means that instead of your gen taking 90 seconds, it takes like almost 2 minutes. That's crazy. That is insane. No toolbox is worth that. Not even a commodious toolbox is worth that to have it fully recharged. All right, plot twist. Gonna piss a lot of people off too, but the time sink. You guys are sandbagging your teammates every day when you use this. It takes, I want to say, 25%. Okay, yeah, so it increases your recovery speed by 25%. So instead of it taking 32 seconds for you to heal yourself, gotta do some math here, I always forget the number. Okay, so yeah, it takes 24 seconds for you to recover from the dying state to heal yourself. And it only takes 16 for a teammate to heal you. So you're already sandbagging with that. But on top of that, you're literally downing yourself, you guys. Like, this is like Repressed Alliance Part 2. Can you guys think of a single killer perk that gives the survivors that much pressure in exchange for a teeny tiny effect like a health state? A sandbag health state at that, because you wasted time that you could have spent on a generator. Like, I can't rationalize that for you. If you don't understand why giving the killer a free down, they might be able to capitalize on if they have good game sense. I do, like once a week. Find somebody with plot twist, that is. Like, I can't explain to you why that's bad. One thing I want to talk about, since there's two more self-heal perks on this tier, is I know there's going to be people being like, well, 16 seconds for 2 survivors is actually 32 seconds because it's 2 survivors. Like, no, okay? I'm not going to argue with you about the facts of reality. 16 seconds is 16 seconds is 16 seconds is 16 seconds, no matter what. If there's 1 survivor present or 100 survivors present for that 16 seconds, it is 16 seconds, period, okay? 2 people being off of a gen for 16 seconds is not 32 seconds, it is 16. Okay? And it is still more efficient than you sandbagging me with your plot twist. So I will be removing any comments that contain that misinformation. So, all right, Boon Illumination. Much like Boon Shadow Step, it takes 14 seconds for you to bless a dull, 28 for a hex, and you can never get that time back from the effect of the perk. Strengthen Shadows. This allows you to heal yourself in the basement. I believe it takes 23, 24 seconds if you do this. Still more than 16 though. So, and you have to be in the basement. You're at huge risk there. So, not as huge as something like Plot Twist, but still. Sandbag perk. Bardic Inspiration. A lot of people don't know this, but the performance part with the loot of Bardic Inspiration takes 20 seconds. So even if you roll a d20 and you hit every great skill check, you will not get the time back that you spent doing the performance on this perk. So it is a time sink sandbag perk. It's fun, and most people do use it just for the fun little effect of being able to play the loot. But if you're using it for the intention of gen rushing, know that you're actually wasting more time than if you had just done the gen without the perk. Hardened. This perk, after you've opened a chest and cleansed a totem, you don't scream. And when you would have screamed, you see the killer's aura instead. Time sink. You'll never get that back. Specialist. This activates after you've searched a chest, and every time you do that, you get a token. And when you hit a great skill check, you spend the tokens and you get permanent charges off the gen. Now the thing is it takes 8 seconds for you to search a chest. And you get, I think it's 4 charges off the gen for each token, maybe. So you can never get the time back. You would have, like, the time you spent searching the chests, you'll never get back from the permanent charges off the gen. It's not equivalent. Moment of Glory. This is just a worse version of Clean Break. Instead of it activating while you're healing a teammate, it does the exact same thing, the 60 seconds of broken and all that. But instead of it activating when you're healing a teammate, something that you would already be doing, you have to go out of your way and search 2 chests. So, time sink, sandbag. Treacherous Crows. This is an invocation perk. Much like Weaving Spiders, you go in the basement, do a ritual, and while you're doing that ritual, it takes 60 seconds. Then when you're done, every time the killer scares a crow, everybody sees their aura for 2 seconds. You would have to read, the killer would have to scare 30 crows for you to get your time back doing that. And you're broken for the rest of the trial. This is just awful. It is a terrible, terrible perk. It's not, I can't say it's as bad as Repressed Alliance because it doesn't actively block you from your objective or give the killer free pressure, but it is very bad. Apocalyptic Ingenuity. This activates after you've searched a chest or rummaged a chest. I think you have to do it twice. I might be wrong on that, but either way, it allows you the ability to rebuild a fragile pallet in the place of where a pallet once was. A fragile pallet is a pallet that breaks as soon as it's dropped, so you have to stun the killer with it for it to be of any use at all. Yeah, I mean, time sink, once again. Like, you have to search a chest to do it. If this worked based off of gen progress, or if it was, even if it was like a real pallet instead of a fragile pallet, it probably wouldn't be as bad, but it's just utterly useless. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is like another version of Bardic Inspiration. It's a tambourine instead of a lute. You play it, and instead of like rolling a dice like you do with Bardic Inspiration, you, after your performance, it increases your chances of getting skill checks by like 20% or something like that. Again, even if you get full value out of this perk and you get 20% more skill checks and everything like that, and you hit them all great and everything like that, you will never ever get your time back that you wasted doing the performance. Again, most people bring it just to be silly and see the little tambourine performance, which is fine. It's cute, whatever. But if you're using it for gen rushing, know that you're not actually gen rushing. You're sandbagging your team. Then finally, we have a perk from the new survivor, Shane Wigwas, called Lend a Hand. A lot of people have fallen for this one too, unfortunately. What this does is after you cleanse a totem, I don't know if it works on blessing. It might. But either way, after you cleanse or bless a totem, you get the ability to permanently remove 4 charges from a survivor's heal progress. But again, 4 charges off of a survivor's heal progress is 4 seconds saved for 1 heal. and it takes 14 to cleanse a totem. Again, if the killer has hexes, it automatically shoots up to like B tier. But in the average typical game of Dead by Daylight, killers do not run hexes, and therefore it is useless at the majority of games. You would have to heal the same survivor 4 times to get your time back on this, which I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time I healed a survivor 4 times in one game. So yeah. All right, that is the last perk. That is all of them. Thank you guys for tuning in to my 2026 updated official survivor perk tier list. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow my other socials, link down in the description, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!